right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you are joining us, I am Billy Bob, and I have a special guest with me, the Ollie Mentalist. And I know
The
he has a real
Elementalist.
name, but okay, pronounce it better for me.
The Elementalist. Sorry.
Element. Okay, I don't know why I want to say Ollie. Um,
Muhammad
but
Ali.
we we are engaging in an informal experiment here, and we're we the two of us have ideological disagreements, but we are both interested in discussing our perspectives and and understanding better where the other side is coming from. And I kind of just think that in our society we need more good faith discussion and talking about ideology and what we think and why. I think is good and important. And so what I've done is I'm posting this to my Facebook wall, and I'm encouraging people, if they would like to participate, to just let me know in the comments or through instant messaging, and I can send you the link, and we can you can jump on and join us. So I doubt anybody will be interested in doing that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's more of an experiment. And again, very informal. I don't want, I can't help but being informal because I'm not smooth and polished enough to to have a more formal approach. But and that's part of the issue is I do want to kind of get more comfortable. I want to get better at having these conversations and really getting to the heart of differences and ideology and really trying to better understand reality. So it's interesting that all of us human beings, we have minds and we have a capacity to try and understand and try and figure out why things are the way they are. And so, we all have that in common. And what's interesting is how we all come to very different conclusions about what is going on, why things are the way they are, and what positions we ought to take on political issues, cultural issues. So it's to me, it's just the most important and the most interesting thing that there is to talk about. And so I do appreciate my guest, joining us and talking with me about these things.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So that's a very broad, very general introduction, and I haven't even settled on a particular topic. And I'm open to whatever. I don't know if you have a pressing topic in mind that you'd like to discuss, or any just basic thoughts on my general introduction.
So the last time we talked, it was more of I guess you could say debate. But I was hoping, I know me and you were able to talk on online and on our group for a little bit. And I know we've had some discourse, obviously. Um, but I was hoping, you know, due to the recent events that's going on and what we talked about beforehand through Messenger, I was hoping, we can, do a little bit more trying to agree on things. Hopefully we can. I think we will. We can talk about, what your solution is, what my solution is, but I, due to the recent events that's been going on lately, I would definitely like to discuss like how we could unify on a short term and a long term. And then we have some time. I definitely think we could talk about, because 9/11 just passed too. We could talk about that, and then the Charlie Kirk assassination too.
Yeah, those are all pretty big topics. I mean, we could spend hours on any one of them. Um, you wanna. I could definitely share a brief summary of my whole perspective on the Charlie Kirk murder.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, well, why do you refuse to call it an assassination?
Oh, well, no, I I could call it an assassination. I think
Okay.
assassination is more for someone who has, political power, like a political leader. He was a propagandist, and I guess you could call it an assassination. I wouldn't be too concerned about that, but
Okay.
it, you know, I think murder just fits better for me, but I'm not opposed to those who want to call it an assassination. It's fine. I mean, he was definitely political. He was politically active. He was a part of a political movement. But to me, it's like assassination is more like a political official. But we don't have to. I'm not going to police that. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what? Do you think he had it coming or what?
um. Well, I mean, so who was Charlie Kirk? I mean, Charlie Kirk served a purpose, for the ruling establishment. He was a benefit to them, and that's why he was promoted and platformed. So as a propagandist, he furthered the ruling class interests of dividing society, and of getting people to engage in a perpetual, never-ending culture war, as opposed to the class war. So his purpose was to get people engaged in a culture war that, again, won't ever be won by any side. It's just a perpetual way to divide the working class and to get them engaged in something that keeps them from engaging in what people ought to be engaged in and what is really important, which is the class war. So in that way, he was, a valuable asset to the ruling establishment. And now the problem is, it depends on what your narrative is regarding how he died. If you believe that he was killed by a culture war extremist, which is kind of what the media is suggesting, right? That he facilitated and he really stoked this culture war, and
Yeah.
people who really bought into the culture war, real culture war extremists,
The left did it.
yeah, thought that he was, deserved to die, and so they killed him. And so I don't think he deserved to die. I mean, I don't think, I don't, I don't condone his killing. I mean, I'm not like, as far as people dying. I mean, you don't want to see it. Like, I mean, we're all human beings.
But won't we
But again,
have to no, I'm sorry. Won't won't
go ahead.
won't, we have to round up the counter revolutionaries and put them on the wall though if once the revolution starts occurring?
Okay. Um, Okay, so you're saying if we have a class struggle and the class struggle ends in victory for the working class, and we're able to um, take political control from the ownership class, from the capitalists, and put it in the hands of the working class, that would be bad because counter revolutionaries would be killed.
No, well, the ends justify the means, remember? So what we're talking about is, we have an agenda. We got to save the working class, right? And and sometimes when we have to save the working class, that also entails saving them from themselves. So, I think what we're talking about is, anybody who is saying counter-revolutionary rhetoric, um, people who are saying bad things about the vanguard. Um, in theory, we would have to round these people up and execute them, or at least put them in jail, right? Because again, we got to make sure that we get the current oligarchy out of there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I mean, if look, I mean, in this country, obviously, we're a million miles away from ever having a successful working class revolution, but we have seen where they've been successful. And of course, I'm thankful and I'm glad that the working class was successful in China, overthrowing the imperialist puppets and taking power there, and also in Russia. the Soviet Union. But yeah, I mean, that's what a revolution is. So a revolution is the overthrow of the existing, in this case, it would be oligarchy, and replacing it with a government that benefits the interests of the, that exists to further the interests of the working class. And so the
by
actual
by any means necessary, right?
well, yeah. So the nature of how that conflict plays out is kind of up to the the oligarchy itself, right? And because if the oligarchy is willing to cede power through the vote, then violence wouldn't even be necessary, right? But if the oligarchy is engaged in an effort to to murder leaders of the working class, like they've done in this country for generations, um, and the people organize themselves and are able to resist that and come against that, and take political power successfully. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to there would have to there's no other choice either to resign yourself to perpetual tyranny by the oligarchy, or to resist and overthrow them. I mean, there's only two options. And so the
Yeah.
nature of how you resist and overthrow them is going to be dictated by the oligarchy themselves. If they're going to violently resist, you're going to have to violently, respond violently too, or cede defeat. I mean, I don't know. I don't know any other options.
So you're saying Charlie Kirk's death, you're saying he didn't deserve it because you believe that, I mean, it's not really part of the actual revolution that's going on.
Yeah, no, our society is not engaged in a working class revolution. There's a culture war, and the culture war, I think, is created, manipulated, and maintained by the ruling class because
Yeah,
they don't
that's true.
want they want people engaged in a culture war that's that they can use for their interests, and they don't want us engaged in a class war. But again, if there was a class war, I would support that, and but again, yeah, in this country, we're a million miles away from that.
By any means necessary, though, right?
Well, okay, so you're asking me, would you? Are there things that you wouldn't do to win the class struggle? Right, like you're saying, like are there rules that, are there bounds that you wouldn't cross? Would you rather just admit defeat and live in perpetual, you know, oligarch tyranny? Um, that's kind of your question, right? And it's a weird one to me. It's like, um,
Well, again, the Marxist Leninist perspective, right? We got to make sure we get these. We got to make sure our side gets in there, and if that means having open sessions, rounding up the counter revolutionaries who are a threat to the vanguard. Um, we just got to do what we got to do, right? Like it doesn't matter what it is, even if that's mass murder. We The ends justify the means, and it's
yeah.
completely verifiable, right?
Well, I mean, that's a revolution, right? Like, I mean, have you ever seen a revolution? Do you know what a revolution is? And if we had a revolution in this country, I mean, it's not a tea party, right? So, of course,
Yeah.
no,
I'm sorry. I mean, that's an interesting way of yeah. No, it's not a tea
well,
party. Yeah.
I'm quoting Ingalls, right? Like that's an Ingalls quote, and so they're very clear that it's not like socialists are enamored with violence and are just violent for no reason or because they like it. Like that's not the reality. But the reality is, any revolution to overthrow an existing tyranny um, is going to be violent, unless that tyranny gives way. So we've seen, like in Venezuela, for instance, we've seen how the vote can be used to take power non-violently. Now, I don't think that case hasn't settled, right? Because the West has been trying to do violent things against that government ever since they won by the ballot box. But again, I'm going to just totally reject the idea that Marxist Leninists are want violence for the sake of violence. Now, I mean, if we're engaged in a revolution, are we going to just admit defeat without without engaging in I don't know. It's like, because that's kind of um, when we talk about the repression in the Soviet Union that the Soviet government administered to those who were violently opposed and trying to subvert and overthrow the communist government, right? So it's like you can either
Yeah.
engage in repression or you can surrender. And
We're
so
not even talking about the ruling class. We're just talking about the civilians who have too much of a big mouth. They're saying too many things. They're saying very counter revolutionary things online. We're not even talking about the ruling class. We're talking about the groups and the individuals who are going to go against the Marxist Leninist agenda. We're talking about, if push comes to shove, as Marxist Leninists, we have to round them up. We have to do what we have to do to silence them
you mean
by any means.
instead of
Can we at
surrendering?
least agree on that,
Well,
please?
agree on. That's why I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what you're saying. I mean, the way you just said it, I don't agree with, but
Right.
when it comes to do we just surrender, like again, like the Soviet Union in the 30s, um, they could have just surrendered and handed over control to some other entity, right? And they could have done that, but instead of doing that, I think they did the right thing, and they continued to maintain, the current government that had mass support against a small group of people who wanted to violently resist, the project and what they had accomplished so far. And so, no, I think that the Soviet Union made the right decision to engage in the repression of those who were trying to violently overthrow them, because I think that their project was worthwhile, and of course it was tremendous because it did defeat European fascism, and it did
Hmm.
a whole lot of things for women's rights and humanity. And so again, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate, supporter, and proponent of actual existing socialism, and I'll definitely defend, their actions, because their actions are ultimately defensible. So I don't know. I mean, that's kind of my perspective, and um, I'm just trying to understand what you think they should have done differently, because as far as I can tell, the only thing they could have done differently was just to surrender and cancel it and say, okay, hey, we're I know we're in 1937 now, and we had a successful civil war, we had a successful revolution, we've been in power, we've eliminated famine, we've built up these, but you know what, this block of Trotskyists and rightists that is allied with Japan and Nazi Germany, we're just going to go ahead and let them take power, and we'll go ahead and give up.
Oh,
Like,
well, I think if we get into that, we're going to be talking about a lot of things we were talking about the last time we were live stream. So, so you know who Fred Hampton is?
yeah, great man.
Yeah. So with this whole Charlie Kirk thing, they're really trying to blame it on the left, whatever that means. I don't know what the left
Okay.
means, but they're trying to blame it on the left. They're trying to blame it on the Democrats. So and there, a lot of them are. Maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but a good amount of them are talking about, a civil war and going after leftists. So so I guess that when we talk about like a rainbow coalition, like what Fred Hampton wanted, um, and then I don't I love the Black Panthers. Like I know I'm gonna get a lot of crap for that as an anarchist. That's fine. I don't agree. I don't necessarily agree with how they did things, but they were really more like democratic socialists and they were more decentralized. So I guess that's why I can look at them and say, okay, they did some pretty good things. And they did it locally. I like that. But you know, with all this stuff going, do you think that tankies and anarchists can actually unify together in times like this? Can we actually put our differences aside and be able to coalition with things that we agree with?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. It's an interesting discussion. Like the ideology of anarchism. I mean, um, I just kind of I reject it because it's to me it's nonsensical. You know, it's kind of blaming the idea of hierarchy and the idea of a state when I think that states and hierarchies are absolutely essential to modern human society. And I think maybe in an agrarian society you could have some kind of a functional anarchy system as long as you don't want to benefit from any kind of technology. But um, so, you know, ideologically
So that's what we're
speaking,
gonna is that really what we're gonna do, BB? Come on, man.
what?
I gave you a good faith based question, and that's what you're gonna do. Really? Really?
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand your response to what I just said. Honestly, I mean, I'm making the
I think
point
you
that
do.
well, uh, so no, you're asking me the question. Okay, so I'm glad my co friend just popped in, and so this will be interesting for him. So allow me
Oh, it
to
is going to be interesting.
get him involved with this. Greg, thank you for
Greg,
popping in.
Hey
Um,
there.
this is my friendly anarchist interlocutor, and I can't help but say Ali mentalist, Ali mentalist. Um,
Yeah, yeah, the
but okay,
elementalist.
we just hit an impasse. So I'm
Elementals.
glad to see you, Greg, because we hit an impasse, and I need you to help me out. So he asked me a very simple question. It's like, in times like now, can Marxist Leninists and anarchists unify and have like a rainbow coalition to come against some of the probably the fascisty things that are going on in society right now. And I started to ponder that question. I began answering it by saying that I entirely reject the ideology of anarchy, and I kind of think it's nonsense, and I don't think it would work in a modern society. It conceptually possibly could work in an environment, in an agrarian society. But anyway, and that kind of upset him, and so, and he's
Mm.
like, "Really? Is that where you want to go, Billy
I
Bob?"
I,
And
I wasn't
I'm
upset.
right,
You
not
see,
upset,
you're
but
doing it again. Hey, Greg,
okay,
Greg,
Uh-huh.
maybe you're a little bit more good faith than
yeah,
BB over here. Maybe me and you can have a reasonable discussion. You know, because like I was saying, Charlie Kirk, as you know, was just recently assassinated, and
Mm-hmm.
they've been trying to blame it on the left and the Democrats
Right.
and all sorts of people other than Charlie Kirk himself. Which, by the way, I never celebrated the death, nor did I mourn it. No, I mean, I just don't think it's I just don't think it's productive. And I think people are already upset. As you can see, they're going full cancel culture on anybody who
Right.
speaks bad about him. So what I was asking BB is, does he think with these dark times that are going on, is there a possibility that Marxist Leninists and anarchists can unify and create their own new version of a rainbow coalition? And he just went off on a rant about like how anarchism is nonsensical and
you didn't let me finish,
how it
but that's
can't work
fine.
when he knows for a fact it can work because we've talked about it multiple times. But again, I would like to get your take on it.
Yeah, I would put off the question of whether it can work or not and say yes, definitely for Popular Front right now. That's I think the historically validated strategy.
Okay, and I think I might have gotten around to that. I mean, I was just honestly thinking through it in my brain, and so I'm sorry, if you know my honest perspective about the viability of anarchist ideology, um, you know, kept me from being able to finish my thought. So, I mean,
But why would you? What I just don't understand
I
is
yeah, go ahead.
what I just don't know, because we've talked about this many times in our groups, and I've given you real world examples. I've given you so much empirical evidence that suggests everything on the contrary. So my question to you is why would you say that when you know it's
Yeah,
not
no,
true?
and so I think I can agree with Greg, and maybe that's a question we don't need to get into. I mean, we can if we really want to, but no, I mean, I'm telling you my opinion, and it's an honest opinion. And I know we have had these discussions, especially in text, quite extensively, and I understand you've brought up examples, and so if you want you know and I've responded to those examples, and I've said those examples aren't compelling to me. But again, we don't need to get bogged down on that. We can talk about, because I think it's true that,
So
like,
can you
uh,
so can you just look at the camera and say it can work, just so that we can get on a good topic and a good rapport with each
I
other?
can't honestly say that because I don't honestly believe that. But
So how can you not? Well, how can you not believe that? Because anarchism is the only system that's ever achieved communism.
well, I don't think
What
that's
are
true.
you
Like, that's just
referring to,
go ahead, please.
Alan?
I'm talking about indigenous anarchism. For instance, the Haudenosaunee, they had a moneyless, classless, and stateless society. You have the Zapatistas right now who have a lip sock system where it's stateless and classless. The CNTFAI, they were socialist, and they were able to achieve a stateless and classless society. And on so like and me and BB has gone over this extensively. That's why I don't think it's fair for him to have that opinion when he hasn't been able to refute anything I've said about it. You know, but it's just I these are the examples I gave him. You know, so when he says that's his opinion, I don't I don't think he's being quite honest, quite frankly. No, with all due respect.
What's the last example you gave? CNP?
The CNTFAI,
CNT. Yeah.
it was an anarchist confederation of unions during the Spanish Civil War from
Ah.
37 to 39. And they had millions of people in it. It was an industrialized society because they had seized the means of production through force. And within a span of 3 months, they were able to abolish the state, and they were able to structure it through worker syndicates, which, I mean, they're closely to unions, but I mean,
Mhm.
a worker syndicate is basically a politicized union. But it was successful.
So I wanted to make the point, and you guys can change the subject back if you want, but I just want to make the point that, I mean, I think that we ought to work with anybody who is willing to work with us, and and work towards progress. So, for instance, when we're talking globally, I think there's my perspective is that we have a global Western imperialist system that is trying to maintain and expand its hegemony over the planet. And so I'm definitely willing to work with people that are non communist, right? So the state of Russia, for instance, they're not nominally communist. Iran is, not nominally communist. And I think we need to ally. I'm glad that China is allying with Russia and Iran to have an alternative and working really towards to displace Western imperialism. And so I think the same thing can happen domestically. Liberals who are unhappy with the status quo, conservatives who are unhappy with status quo, anarchists who are unhappy with status quo. Yeah, we can all work together and try to, I don't know, create a better society, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it's just, I don't know. I think that the primary thing we need to do is to just, put in place a government that, is sincerely interested in benefit the working class. And we're just a million trillion miles away from that. And so I don't really see any hope or utility in any kind of a domestic coalition doing anything. But I mean, I definitely wouldn't oppose it. I just don't think there's any chance of that really ever being successful, at least in the short term.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as you guys were saying, which we appear to be entering a more fascist stage, I think this all shifts, right? Then there is a need to combine and work together in ways that we might not ordinarily think about.
Yeah, if we go to the Eastern or the Western European parallels, in the 30s, no, it's true. But also, I mean, we see that there were problems with these alliances, right? Like in Spain, we saw these alliances break down on ideological lines. But we can learn from that.
I think, like Trotskyists and, MLs are still arguing over what should have been done in the 30s, or if anything could have been done, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and so it kind of remains to be seen.
If we have the right recipe. Sorry?
Well, I was going to say, it remains to be seen exactly what kind of a turn our society is going to be taking. Definitely, we can speculate that it does look like it's taking a hard right fascisty turn, and an acceleration of the culture war, and just really putting a lot of gasoline on it. I mean, social media, if that's to be a guide, like you can just see the comments getting really, really fascisty. So in that respect, I think, there can be a broad anti-fascist coalition. I mean, obviously the Soviet Union was trying to get an anti-fascist coalition among Western Europe, but of course it's the liberals who oppose an anti-fascist coalition, because ultimately they value the accumulation of capital more than they value human rights or justice.
Yeah, liberals suck.
Yeah, on the state level. Right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, on the I think the debate was over like social democrats and communists and other left forces, how they should work together or not, right? Because initially the Soviet Union was saying the social democrats were social fascists, they need to be opposed, and then once Hitler came in, they shifted, everyone should work together.
How do you feel about democracy, Greg?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine in concept, right? I'm with Lenin about who gets the democratic rights is a class question usually.
Okay, so you're a Leninist.
Okay. So full disclosure,
go ahead.
Greg, I think Greg identifies as a Marxist-Leninist. Me and Greg see pretty much eye to eye on most things. There's not a lot of difference, but I know Greg is a lot more thoughtful than I am, and so he's a good. And I was hoping you would have a second person, another anarchist too, but
that would have been interesting.
Don't feel like we're picking on you or that we were trying to outnumber you. I mean, so I just want to have a discussion.
No, not at all. I could take. I mean, if I can take it. Don't worry.
So I don't know, but what was most stimulating, it seemed at a while ago, was you wanting an explanation for how I could possibly not admit that anarchism is a viable ideology that has resulted in achieving actual communism.
Yeah, why
Um,
don't you look at the camera and say it can work, please?
Mhm.
so I mean, I don't want to disappoint you because I'm a people pleaser, but in all
Me too.
honesty, in all honesty, we could go through any one of your examples, but to me, when I think about the core concepts of anarchism, number one, it seems impossible and contradictory, and I don't see that it's ever succeeded. And so I think we might have different understandings of what anarchism is. We might have different understandings of what communism is, and this could be leading to our this impasse that we're having mentally.
Greg, you see
Well,
what I'm
isn't the
working with
goal
here?
what?
You see what I'm working with here? Like you just heard the real world examples of anarchism, and you just heard what he said. Would you say that's pretty bad faith?
Well, I'm wondering why Billy's rejecting those. That's maybe what he should
Yeah,
say.
please
Clarify.
tell Greg why you're rejecting this. This should be good.
Okay, so I mean, if you just go to the Wikipedia page about the what are they called? Uh, the Zapatistas, right? So the Zapatistas. So the Zapatistas are your example, or one of your examples of where anarchism as an ideology has worked in real life to attain a communist society. And so when I look at that example, I don't see anarchism. I don't see that they've attained communism. And so that's just one. That's
They
just a
don't they don't call themselves anarchists, but they have structured themselves in a decentralized, stateless structure where there are no rulers. Like they just decentralized themselves in 2023, even more than they were now. So now you have less intermediate councils, and now you have more local governance going on. So they don't call themselves anarchists per se, but they do live like anarchists.
well.
And to clarify, I didn't say they were communist either. They're one of the, because my argument is anarchism is the only one that has achieved socialism and communism. Um, Places like the USSR and China, even by Lenin and Stalin's own admission, it's state capitalism, not socialism and communism. So
That's
that
not
was my
accurate.
argument.
Well, let
What's that,
me
Greg?
jump in with a couple things. I mean, I think,
You just
in
wanted to
political,
debate today, didn't you, BB? I'm sorry, Greg. Continue.
yeah, I mean, the one common ground is obviously is very similar goal, right? Stateless, moneyless, right? More
Yes,
utopian type
yes. That
society.
that. Wait, yeah, you're right, Greg. Technically, that's all of our end goals. We all want that. That's we can agree
Yeah,
on that. Thank you for
yeah.
trying to agree. Unlike BB.
Yeah. No.
So that
Hey.
my one though disagreement though is I think this Lenin didn't say they had achieved socialism, but Stalin and Mao did. And by Marx's definition, which was a dictatorship of the proletariat and collectivization of the means of production, they did. They didn't get to communism or the advanced socialism, as Marx called it, but they did get
Y-
to the
Um.
primary
Right.
socialism stage by Marx's
Right.
definition.
Right. Yeah. Well. In Mao and Lenin's writings, I forget the books, but they say state capitalism should be the goal to transition into socialism. And as
Right.
far as Marx believed in democracy, definitely. When we talk about dictatorship of the proletariat, he didn't mean dictatorship in, like, the authoritative sense. He meant the workers should dictate how society is ran. So what Marx wanted was a temporary state, and what he wanted was that temporary state to be democratically owned by the workers. And that's and in theory, like, really, he basically wanted anarchism, if we're because he literally said a free association of workers. So when we talk about Marx, I mean, the only reason why he's not an anarchist is only because he believed in reform. Other than that, we could easily say Marx was an anarchist, but you know, Mao
Well,
and Lenin did say that the capture of the state first is how we get to the transition of socialism. So by Marx standards, no, China nor the USSR ever actually achieved uh, socialism.
socialism, by Marxist criteria, they did, not communism or the advanced stage of socialism.
Elaborate.
Well, like I said, Marx's criteria was dictatorship of the proletariat and collectivization of the means of production. I don't see how he specified too much on the nature of the state, other than its class character would be the opposite of what we have now. So there,
Well,
and the
like he
purpose of
wanted
that stage is
mhm.
to build the to eliminate scarcity, which is the basis for class and oppression in his view. So it's
Well, yeah,
only once you eliminate material scarcity that you can start to think about eliminating the government as a repressive instrument of class power.
yeah, but the dictatorship of the proletariat, again, it wasn't a literal dictatorship. He was talking about workers gaining control and being able to have like the autonomy of what is going on in society. Um, and again, the state was supposed to be temporary. You look at USSR, China, they've been around for decades. Like China's been around for almost 90 years, and there has
Well, if
been
they
no
overcome
means in
scarcity
sight
is
to
the
actually
question.
what?
If they overcome scarcity would be the question for Marx.
Oh well, I mean they really haven't, right? Like
Yeah.
60, like the China has billionaires. Um, they haven't really decentralized. I mean, have they attempted at all to decentralize, Greg? Do you know?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
No, I
So
mean I
until
wouldn't
we actually get,
within the theory that, dissolving of the state wouldn't be happening yet because they're still trying to overcome scarcity. You could say they're doing it backwards, maybe if they have billionaires, but that's the goal of this phase of socialism.
yeah, and I'm sure of it, maybe one day we can see some of that inequality go down, but inequality is going to continue to pursue as long as the capitalist interests within China continue to be able to buy more and more special favors from the state. Like right now, 60% of the GDP from China is from corporations, not state owned, by the way. So my argument is um, it doesn't matter whether you call yourself an anarchist or not. The only way you're going to get to where we have to get, which is anarchism as shown, is you have to have a decentralized system where the workers actually control the means of production, and where they can actually have the control of the socioeconomics of their system. Because if you don't do that, what's going to happen is you're just going to end up with another ruling class. And the reason why ruling class systems exist is because they have a monopoly on capital and capital power, which transfers into defense and violence for said ruling class with police and military. Um, so again, like you don't necessarily have to be an anarchist, but you have to understand that democracy, especially on a local level, has to be one of the prere- prerequisites of a socialist system.
Okay. No, I appreciate this discussion, and we definitely have disagreements, and there's substantial disagreements. I have somebody that is saying they're interested in joining us, and I want to encourage anybody that's watching that if they have something they would like to say, jump on. So that was the experiment that we're engaged in. I'm just trying to think how I can get this person the link. So give me a second. I think I can get them the link very quickly. And yes. Okay. So I just sent Colin Marks a link. I hope I just realized he wanted a link. And so I don't know what he has to say. I like his name. But
Yeah, me
so
too.
what where can we go from here that's helpful, informative, and substantial? Like, I mean, I think we have differences. I think that the the logical thing to do is to zero in on those differences, and I think those
Let's
differences.
let me
Go
I
ahead.
just looked up. I had it fairly handy. Marx's quote on dictatorship. Let me read that if you guys don't mind. From
Please.
Critique of the Gotha Program, which is,
Okay.
I think, what people say he spelled it out the most, which isn't a lot. It says the question then arises: what transformation will the state undergo in a communist society? In other words, what social functions will remain in existence? There are analogs to present state functions. The question can only be answered scientifically, and one does not get a flea hop nearer the problem by a thousandfold combination of the word people with the word state. Between capitalist and communist society, there lies the period of the revolutionary transformation of one into the other. Corresponding to this, there is also a political transition period in which the state can be nothing but the revolutionary dictatorship of the proletariat.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
when I read that, I mean, it seems clear that it's a transition phase. While humanity dispenses with the age of exploitation and the age of capitalism, and we're moving to a better system that isn't predicated on the exploitation of others, and that's gonna be a revolutionary period, because you're gonna have the ownership class resisting this transition, because this transition for them means they lose their positions of wealth, power, and privilege. So they're going to be violently resisting this transition, and that's why the dictatorship of the proletariat must act dictatorially against the ownership class. And so currently, we see the ownership class controls the means of production in the West. They control the government, and they act dictatorially against the working class. And so there's going to be a transition
Who does?
phase. Well, currently it's the ownership class has the dictatorial powers in the West at the moment, and so to reverse that, in the short term, we have to reverse that. We have to become the dictatorial power, and then in the future, after other societies are able to get in power a government that represents the people instead of the oligarchs. We were able to shift the planetary and humanitarian paradigms. And then that's when we can really look at in generations, after success in this endeavor, then we'll be able to look at end stage communism, and really these kinds of things that Marx only talked about very briefly, and give brief glimpses of what things could be like. I don't think he spent a lot of time talking about the end stage communist utopic system. He was more interested in describing capitalism as it really exists, explaining to people why we need to move on to a better system, how we can move on to a better system that isn't predicated on the exploitation of the poor by the rich. And so definitely in the short term, that's going to have to include a proletarian dictatorship that represses the counter-revolutionary aspirations of the rich people. And this is what we saw in all the successful revolutions.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Greg's quote from Marx is spot on, and again, like you know, in socialism and communism, I don't think socialism necessarily means stateless, right? Because I think it's going to be a temporary state when it's in socialism. But even Marx said, like, Marx railed against the state. He said we can't continue to depend on the state. He said the dictatorship of the proletariat should consist of a free association of workers. And he even praised the Paris Commune, which was basically anarcho-communism or communism. So, you put all the little pieces together, and I'm pretty sure he said something about democracy in there too. So you put all those little pieces together, it interprets to me that he meant workers' ownership, not state ownership. And I have to say, I find it very ironic you're talking about replacing the state with another state and expecting to get different results. Um, Successful revolutions, have any of the Marxist Leninist societies ever achieved communism by any chance? Do you know, BB?
Well, I mean, it's it's a great discussion, and I appreciate the discussion. And I think we just have different
Me
understandings
too.
of these terms. So look, I'm not even going to say there's a right way to understand it, but I think what's important is
Okay.
that you understand our understanding, because you can't effectively critique or have a valid opinion about our understanding unless you understand it. And when I hear you talk, I don't think you quite really get what socialism is, what communism is. So, and again, and I'm not even saying that we have a concrete
I
belief,
think you
right?
do.
So you could there's many valid perspectives. So for instance, I kind of Marxism, socialism, and communism, I can lump them all together and say that they are the the intent to identify and you know identify and achieve the interests of the working class majority, in an ever changing world of material conditions and against the oppositional interests of the ownership class. And so it's very
So can
broad.
you? I don't mean to interrupt you. I just you,
Okay.
can you Marxist Leninism is the idea of the vanguard party, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
let's answer from Marxist-Leninism frame. It's
okay.
very simple
Go,
or
Greg,
clear.
please.
I don't think it's mushy. There has been no example of a socialist society crossing into communism. Correct. Right. I
I
mean,
mean, under
not by
anarchism,
any
yes, but
Yeah, no,
definition.
if
not
we
What?
define
not
communism,
Marxist-Leninist. You are correct. Yes.
Right. Not a
if we
Marxist-Leninist
if we define
nation.
communism as a borderless, classless, stateless society that has abolished scarcity, which again, that's how I would
Right.
define it.
Right.
Yes, nobody, it hasn't been achieved anywhere, and it
Yeah, it
can't be
has.
achieved, and it
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
be
it did.
achieved. Well, I said
It was
abolish
achieved.
scarcity. I don't
Yeah,
know where
no, it did.
scarcity has been abolished.
Yeah, well, like I said, there are many indigenous anarchist systems, um, like the Black Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Again, they had no money, they had no class, they had no state. Oh, uh, Dust, is that his name?
Yeah.
Oh. All of them have had great success. Okay, yeah, Dust. Nobody disagrees with that, right? Like we all know that there were some improvements, but at what cost, right? Um, Mass murder, suppression, human rights violations. These are all the things that happened under ML systems. So yeah, we can talk about all the successes all day. Which, by the way, ML's got lucky because they got Russia and China, one of the biggest populations in the world. So it was kind of hard for the U.S. to take them down, kind of like how they did with the CNTFAI and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I'll give them that, but again, it was just out of pure luck. But I mean, nobody denies there were successes in China.
I mean,
Like,
pure luck.
for
Those are
instance, I like China.
two
Like, for instance, there's
distinct.
this thing China does. It's the way they do it is pretty messed up. But the way I would do it, I would take from it, and because what they do is they have government owned websites and search history engines um, that allow their people to have a legitimate alternative from corporations and the apps and websites they have. I think that's pretty cool what China does with that, minus, trying to stop their people from getting actual knowledge. But I would actually take that and make it more the anarchist version where, you still have access to the World Wide Web all around. It would just be more locally done, or you don't even have to do that because there's a lot of open source things that, other companies have already made for people. So, but yeah, no,
So
nobody's denying Dave
how
had
do
some
we
justice.
how do we bridge this divide? How do we focus in on our differences? I
Well,
think.
what
Go ahead.
causes the repression and violence in Marxist Leninist states, as you see it, Ali?
Oh, you're asking me why they always lead
Yeah, what's
to
your understanding of
okay,
why that
okay. Well,
happens?
I think Marx and people like Bakunin and here's the thing. Like here's the thing, Greg. Like you guys are 100% right on the theory. Like nobody denies that. You understand like class warfare and bourgeoisie democracy and all the good buzzwords we all love using, right? But what you don't seem to understand is the reason why all these ML systems end up becoming very authoritarian and very and always find themselves getting capitalism reemerging in their systems is because of the class system. What is a class system? A class system is a system where a ruling class exists. And the reason why ruling classes exist under capitalism is because you have a small group of aristocrats and politicians coming together to have the monopoly on capital. And once you have the monopoly on capital, there's something about power that corrupts people. I know people say, like, they were already corrupted, but again, that's a real human nature thing with people with power. Regardless of what you think about it, we see what how it corrupts people. So that's why we always see places like China, you know, they're seeing more privatization. Even in like Scandinavian systems, they're seeing their social safety nets be reduced more and more because you have all these people with all these interests, and they have every incentive, especially if you allow commodification and privatization of the means of production. You're always going to have a small group of people who have an interest in buying out the state. And even if you don't want to talk about, corporate interests, just look at the state as a whole. It's just a small group of people who have power over millions of people. So of course, they're not going to give their lifestyle away. They're not going to give up their fancy homes and cars and stuff just
I
to
mean, I don't
please
think
you.
we can say that violence in socialist societies comes from the ruling party trying to preserve its power and maintain dominance
It
as
does or doesn't.
new ruling class. I don't think we can say that's the main source of the violence. I mean, you can
Maybe not
trace
the
it
main
to,
source.
I don't even know if it's a primary source other than preventing counter revolution. I don't see it as similar to the capitalists, where it is preemptively suppressing all opposition to its rule in the same way. I think the driver of the violence, which you can see, is imperialism.
Yes. Yes, imperialism. I mean, what would you define as imperialism?
I mean, as the Soviet Union started saying that they were under capitalist encirclement and siege, right? Um, I mean, China, the US was fighting in the Civil War against them, and starting in the 50s, launched a worldwide trade embargo, that kind of stuff. And then constant military pressure, regime change, color revolutions.
Would you say imperialism would involve a country trying to accumulate, whether purposely or not, territory or resources of another country?
What is that? How you're defining imperialism? I
I
mean,
would
it's.
ask you if you would define if you would agree that that's a legitimate definition of imperialism.
I mean, I like the Marxist-Leninist definition. I mean, you can say there's, imperialism that was pre-capitalist that was different than what happened post-capitalist, right?
Right. And as long as China has billionaires and corporations in place, do you really see them um, do you really see them actually having any incentive to give more power to the workers rather than themselves?
Yeah, they're not ruling. The billionaires aren't in charge in China.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that in theory. Um, but we do see them giving corporations special favors and stuff like that, right? Like you have to have complete obedience and loyalty to Xi Jinping.
Well, I mean, I think what we should call that is state capitalism, where
Oh,
the
oh,
capitalist
hey
must
man,
be
we agree.
suborned to the state. Yeah, modern China
Yeah,
is state capitalism along the lines of what Lenin's NEP
can you
was.
tell Bibi that,
I, I don't
please?
know that he would disagree.
Yeah, no, that's not a point of contention. I mean, so yeah, Lenin said socialism is state capitalism meant to serve all the people.
He said it's the
And
precondition for socialism, state capitalism.
so we're
Yeah,
not
Lenin
opposed.
said that,
We're not,
right?
we don't oppose you when you claim that China is state capitalism. But I would also
Okay,
say
good.
that there's
Good.
socialist, and I don't think there's a big distinction between state capitalism meant to serve all the people and socialism. Like I see these things as synonymous. And also, I mean, socialism isn't just achieving a certain metric of socialism. Socialism is also the journey towards that destination. And so, they're navigating existing material conditions, which include capitalist encirclement, a capitalist planet, and most of the world's economy in the hands of private capital. These are things that we have to navigate. And when you have a communist party navigating those things for a given society, like that's also socialism, just because they haven't yet achieved end stage global communism doesn't mean they're not on a path. They're not doing their best to work in that direction. So I think sometimes anarchists just have unrealistic expectations of a given revolution in a given society, and the fact that they haven't yet attained total end stage global communism. I don't think that's really a fair criticism.
Global communism. Well, I mean, we achieved communism, but it's not that we have high expectations. It's just, you know, some of the things that some Marxist Leninists defend, like the last time we talked on here, you said you have no problem with the Chinese government suppressing protests. And like to me, it's like at that point, you know, what's the difference between what you want and what someone like Nick Fuentes
Well,
wants?
what protests are you talking about? You're talking about like the Hong Kong protests?
The Hong Kong protest. What was the one in
Oh,
2017?
in against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
Not the Uyghurs. It was, oh, I think it was during COVID. There was like this huge protest, and we saw the Chinese. There was Chinese police there, and yeah, they were just arresting people for
Hmm.
protesting. And your response was, the Chinese government has a right to suppress counter-revolutionary thought. And to me, that's no different than like when the U.S. government tries to defend anti-free speech laws, like, oh, we got to protect the country from terrorism. It's just two different euphemisms to me. Someone who sees how power works. So we don't have high
Well, we
expectations. We're just saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't mass murder millions of people to achieve our goals.
Well, I think that we would distinguish between a dictatorship of the Communist Party of China versus the bourgeois dictatorship of the US, even though both have violence, right? I mean, are they
Violence is
equivalent?
fine. Violence is fine in the name of self-defense. Yes.
So, I mean, in terms of China repressing opposition, in a way, they have to, even more than your average socialist society, because they have real life capitalists loose. So they have a problem of, are they going to let them start organizing and buying up media and trying to gain power? I mean, this is one of the knife edges they're walking on by having capitalists.
As far
Yeah,
as
and we'll go.
no,
It,
go
it
ahead.
means it means there's a unfortunate need for more repression, actually, because you have a class who is actively counter-revolutionary. The
And
tendency of any
I
capitalist
wasn't.
is to
So
Yeah,
corrupt the government to increase profits. So they're going to be working to gain power of various kinds with their
so
capital.
why doesn't the CCP decommodify though? Like, why is there corporatism going on within the country? Why is there private ownership of the means of production to begin with? Why not? I mean, because if you're gonna do something like that, you might as well have the government take control of all industry and sectors, right? Isn't that what Mao
Well,
was
that's
doing?
what they had, right? Until the dang reform started, right? Everything was socialized with central planning.
Okay, so yeah, so is that like your end all goal with all this is 100% state ownership?
That's, I mean, according to Marxist theory, that is socialism is the transition
Workers
where
ownership,
the
not state
means of
ownership, but yeah.
production are socialized, collectivized is what Marx says, I think. He doesn't say
Yeah.
democratized.
No, no,
I mean, I
no.
think there's an issue, a side issue is does everybody really want to participate in the running of business and government? I mean, I think the Marxist Leninist perspective is no, everybody's not interested in the minutia of
But doesn't that
running
contradict the
government and a
idea of
business.
communism?
So no. So that's why there's a party. So the people who are interested and skilled at it will volunteer and participate in doing that. And those who, don't want to do budgets and, planning and try to figure out, how the city building code should be, won't do that stuff, which is most people find all that pretty boring.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like you're going to be forced to participate in a local council meeting every month. Like you do have a right to opt out. So I
Sure.
mean,
In
what does
either
that have to
system.
do with
Well, the
what?
Marxist system says if you want to participate, you join the party, you join, organizations at work, or, it's voluntary. That's,
M- Marx talked about a political party.
of course, Vanguard Party.
Marx did.
Marx, yeah, he participated in parties, talked about the
Yeah, but
Communist
the
Party.
theory but in his theory he talked about political parties.
I believe so.
I don't
He
remember
was
that. I
involved
think
in
that's more of that's the Vanguard thing was from
the
Lenin and
Vanguard pieces, Lenin, but I don't think parties are a Leninist invention.
maybe I just misunderstood you. I'm sorry. My apologies. Do you know how anarchism would work in that regard though?
Would work in terms of parties,
No, well,
a
you talked
political
about
party.
organizing with businesses and local governing bodies. Are you aware of how that would even be structured?
Explain more what you're thinking.
Yeah, so the idea under anarchism, which again, real world examples, BB. The thing about anarchism is, we don't. The state is a political organization where a small group of people simply have enough capital, and therefore have the monopoly on force. That's what a state is. A local governing body or a governing body, by definition, is voluntary. The idea of anarchism is to have people naturally associate, have free association of workers, like Marx talked about, and the idea is for people to come together based on values and ideas that they align with and agree with. Like it's we don't believe in utopia, we just believe in a voluntary society. So governing bodies, everybody is going to have their own neighborhood or their own commune or group, and then those groups are going to merge into higher councils within society, like a local or regional council. And as the structure is made from the bottom up, we're talking about these local or regional councils having more macro decision making, um, based upon what the lower councils and communes want. So that's how you get things. So, for instance, a commune would have the autonomy of defense and education and healthcare. The local council might have organization over EMS or land and zoning and parking, like parks. I mean, not parking. And then if you want to hire a council that does transportation or emergency disaster management, these are just facilitating and coordinating bodies. They're not top down structures. And of course, these would be done through consensus and or supermajority, so to make sure that whatever policies that are in place, the people actually want it.
I mean, minus the centralism, that's probably not a whole lot different from like the democratic centralism of how parties work. Right? In China, it's similar. There's local bodies that elect representatives, take votes, and it filters up.
As long as the CCP approves, right?
I mean, within a range of, yeah, I mean, there's a range of options, of course. And like I was saying, in some ways, the Communist Party of China has to be particularly rigid because society has capitalists in it.
Yeah.
So they have,
So yeah. Well, why don't they get rid of the capitalists? Why not just do what Mao was doing, and a 100 fully centralized system, basically a command economy?
well, when Mao ended, there was a lot of different opinions on what China should do, right? So the people, I would say, on the right won the debate because of there was a high level of poverty in a lot of ways after Mao's programs. So
Yeah, the Great
they
Leap
chose
Forward.
programs
Yeah.
to dramatically try to increase the level of material, to decrease scarcity was their goal. Increase the productive forces as fast as possible. So, the downside is they have capitalists now and they have to repress them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. If I was Gigi Ping and I had the power to just, say, get out of here, this is mine now, I would say, why not? I guess that's what I'm just
Right.
confused about.
Yeah, I mean that would be my ideal choice too. But they're in this, right? If they started doing that, they'd have massive capital flight.
But the
It's
Chinese
tricky
government,
now.
yeah, yeah. The Chinese government has, I mean, they they have a history of killing massive amounts of people. So why don't they just do that now with the
I
capitalists
don't think
now?
they have a history of killing massive amounts of people.
Yeah, yeah, the Great Leap Forward. But
I
as
mean, it
far
wasn't
as
that they decided to kill people. There were problems, and but it wasn't like we're willing to, just murder people.
okay, fine. I mean, I guess starvation um can be looked at in many ways, but
Well,
yeah,
nobody
no,
was
they.
happy about it. I mean, Mao stepped back. They,
You know what,
entered a
and you know
period
what,
of
Greg,
reform.
I applaud you because because somebody like BB would try and sugarcoat it. But I appreciate you at least being able to say, yeah, it happened. You know, thank you. I just think
What,
history
Greg? What did you
revisionism.
saying happened? Greg, are you a? What did you? What is Greg saying happened? Explain that one.
That there was famines during the Great Leap Forward, and
Oh yeah, no, I
arguably
don't know who
poor
denies that.
decisions made,
Oh,
and a period
so
of
we're all on the
technocratic
same page then.
reform.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
Damn.
yeah, I don't think anybody's denied that there was a famine during the Great Leap Forward. People that are familiar with history understand that they had consecutive years of El Nino-like weather events that caused consecutive years of bad harvests, and this was weather. You can't blame collectivization for the bad harvest because the collectivizations continued into the late 70s, and the famine ended in 1961 was like the last year of hardship. 62 was a bountiful harvest, and things continued under the collectivization. So, I mean, there's a history to, there's a reality to Chinese history.
multi-determined for sure. The problem.
And then there's, a liberal mythology that, most people just assume is true. But when you actually, study the history, you realize that it's not true and that you're being lied to. And so, I mean, that,
No, we're
realization
not. No, we're not.
dawned on me a long time ago. So,
No, so I mean, you guys
I'm sorry.
understand that China's a very big country, right? So the
Yes.
idea that it was because of weather when there were other parts of China that had more than enough food to make sure these people didn't go without. Like the whole point was Mao was trying to compete with Britain or the UK.
USSR. That was after
Well, I
the
mean, I don't.
Sino-Soviet split.
Well, I know they hated each other. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know Stalin and Mao hated each other. Hey, BB, would you choose
Khrushchev and
Stalin or
Mao.
Mao during that time?
No,
It was
Stalin and Mao
Khrushchev and
were
Mao.
tight.
Stalin and Mao didn't
When
split.
when China entered the Korean War on the side of North Korea, Stalin was amazed. Stalin was really, he got teared up at Mao's courage. And so,
Oh,
no,
really?
they were tight. It was Khrushchev and Khrushchev's denunciation of Stalin that caused the Sino-Soviet split. So that's, I mean,
Right.
but I'm looking for a quote. So like I have really strong opinions on a lot of the things you guys are saying. And I think Greg and I kind of, we have a different narrative when it comes to China and even kind of a definition of what socialism is a little bit. And so while I don't want to, I don't know. I don't want to limit my perspective of socialism as the abolition of private ownership of the means of production.
I didn't say that. But
That is one definition, right? You can define socialism as when production is in the hands of the state, or it's not the lack of private ownership, right? That's one way to do it. But I think there's a broader.
It's Marx's way.
Well, I mean, again,
yeah, I don't know about. He
wouldn't
said workers'
pigeonhole Marx
ownership.
in his understanding and just a narrow definition like that. I think that's one way of understanding what socialism is. But again, I think socialism is also a journey, right? It's not just a destination, but it's the journey. And so I think socialism, again, is identifying the interests of the working class majority and working to achieve those interests against the oppositional interests of the ownership class. And so, and I think that's what Marxism is. And so, again, I would argue that the Marxist thing that China was supposed to do is when the West ended their embargo, their economic embargo, that the Marxist thing to do would be to take advantage of those new opportunities of the ending of the embargo, the opportunity of having access to the Western market, having access to Western direct Western foreign investment and Western technology. That would be the Marxist thing to do because you're going to benefit the interests of the working class by doing that. You're going to increase their opportunity. You're going to increase their standards of living, their access to healthcare, commodities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the Marxist thing to do, in my opinion, in my perspective, my understanding of Marxism, would be to seize on this opportunity to harness a measure of capitalism under the control of a communist party, like they're doing, and then to make sure that it's the knife edge that Greg was talking about, like, because you're dealing with dangerous capitalists who can then work with the imperialists to overthrow your country. But China has avoided those pitfalls. China has again ended the poverty for 800 million people. They've raised living standards faster than anybody else in the history of the known universe. So they have been the most successful society in human history, and that's all thanks to communism and Marxism. And so that's how I look at it. And so and it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more maybe less or more nuanced than the way Greg sees it, and it seems entirely different from the way that you see it. But I do have a quote from Mao that I like to read, and basically he just endorses
Based Mao.
what I'm saying, and I don't know why it's so hard for me to track that quote down. I've played it for Greg before, and it's from 1945. He's saying some people don't understand why the communists embrace capital and capitalism, and it's because of its ability to develop the productive forces most efficiently, develop the productive forces, and work towards prosperity and elimination of poverty.
Greg, you don't actually agree with this, right?
That Mao said this? I mean, this is
no, like that capitalism is needed to help develop socialism. Like, there's no way you believe that either, right?
No, I don't think that's needed.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
I mean, it's a choice they made. I don't think it's the only way to go forward.
Let me just read it. Let me read the quote in its entirety. And so it's 1945. Some people refuse to understand why the Chinese communists do not fear capitalism, but on the contrary, develop it as much as possible. Our answer is simple. We have to replace foreign imperialist and native feudalist oppression with capitalist development, because that is the inevitable course of our economy, and because both the capitalist class and the proletariat benefit. What is superfluous is not native capitalism, but foreign imperialism and native feudalism. On the contrary, our capitalism is indeed too little. To develop industry, enormous capital is required. Well, where will it come from? It can only come from two sources: the capital accumulated by the Chinese people themselves and from foreign loans. And we must welcome all foreign investments as long as they obey the laws of China and are advantageous to our economy. So again, just like North Korea today would very much like for the Western economic embargo to end, Cuba today would like the Western economic embargo to end so that they can develop their economy, engage in trade, and probably harness the productive forces that even Marx said capitalism is good for attaining. And so I mean, it's really basic. So once Kissinger and Nixon went to China, agreed to end the unilaterally imposed Western trade embargo, that opened up a tremendous opportunity for China, and China took advantage of that opportunity. And to say that was un-Marxist of China to take advantage of that opportunity is to fall for this fallacy that there is this thing that is called pure Marxism, and it's when you abolish capitalism. Like that's again, that is not my understanding of what Marxism is. And so Marxism is about identifying and pursuing the best interest of the working class majority. And when these opportunities open up, you want to harness them. And China has done that to an unprecedented degree. There's this other image. It's like its GDP has increased 36 times in the past 30 years, and like the next closest is like India, and it's been like 6 times. It's like so thanks to the Communist Party, China has been able to harness capitalism and use it to its benefit in a tremendous way that would not have ever been possible had China continued to be governed by the capitalists themselves. So this is just what you got to understand.
So that quote, though, needs to be contextualized from Mao. That was before they took power, and he had the initial plan of sharing power with the national bourgeoisie and other forces. They didn't do that at all. And by, the early 50s, Mao was saying we got to get rid of these capitalists because any capitalist is an entry point for imperialism. And starting by 1956, they nationalized everything. So, I mean, this was Mao's initial pre-governing stance, which I think reflects the Soviet Union's two-stage revolution theory. But they didn't stick with it. And, by the end, Mao spent 20 years, not only eliminating capitalism, but eliminating forms of thought that he thought were capitalist-like.
But the question is, so I mean, I can agree that by 56, the most capitalism. I mean, I'm sure there was still family-owned restaurants and things like that. They might have had to register with the state. I mean, I'm sure that's true. But so I don't think private ownership has ever been entirely eradicated anywhere. I mean, you still have small artisans and things like that. But we're talking about large industries, and of course, China, did abolish a lot of capital, and it did usurp them into state-owned enterprises. But the question is, why? And so the question is, so my explanation for why that was going on was twofold. It was because they had to enter into an economy of self-sufficiency. And due to the fact that they had to have an economy of self-sufficiency due to the Western trade embargo and the Sino-Soviet split. So they were no longer getting help from the USSR. They were no longer allowed to deal with any trade with the West. So it was an economy of self-sufficiency was forced upon them. And in that context, the logical thing to do is to have total control of your national economy, because you can't, you have to control it because it's the only thing you have. But again, as the opportunities increase and change, so does your approach to the economy. And so what, Mao never said what I said in 1945 was not true. No, what he said was true, and it continued to be true. And then when in 1971, when the Western trade embargo was lifted, the truth that he said in 1945 was able to be actualized. And so
I challenge you to find anything where Mao says anything like that after 1956. I mean, he really changed.
Well, I mean, no, that to me, like, I'm gonna have to reject that. I mean, because you're just asserting that Mao was being duplicitous and he didn't believe what he was saying.
No, not duplicitous, that he changed.
I mean,
faith.
well, I think,
I
mean, Greg is right. I mean, to be honest, Billy Bob, like, you would defend China no matter what, like, no matter what the contradictions are. I think Greg is actually giving us a legitimate and very like, he's not trying to sugarcoat it. Here you are doing it, so I can at least respect him for like not trying to make every excuse in the book for China.
Why do you think Mao wanted the Western trade embargo to end?
Well, trade is different.
We all know why.
Capitalism.
We all know, we all know why he wanted the embargo to end.
Right.
But again, all this talk about like what capitalism is necessary for socialism to work, and all the reasons why they haven't gotten rid of the billionaires in China. None of that. I mean, again, Xi Jinping has the power right now to take all that from them, but he doesn't, because again, this is what happens when you don't abolish a ruling class and you make the state the new ruling class. You're always going to have a handful of capital owners, whether politicians or individuals, coming together to implement the status quo, which is domination and dominance and subordination over everybody else.
So, I mean, yeah, no, it's an interesting discussion. I'm tunnel visioned on vindicating my statements. And Greg asked,
I'm listening, man. Don't worry about me.
Greg asked, where did Mao say, anything like he said in 1945? And again, I mean, by the time, and I think Mao was responsible largely for the Western trade embargo to end, and he was constantly petitioning and trying to get it to end. And the question is why, if he had no intention of harnessing Western investment, and accessing Western markets. And again, what the West isn't going to invest unless you have a measure of capitalism. And so the trillions and trillions that the West has invested in China to their betterment would have never existed if there was no such thing as capitalism in China. And so this is the point. And so of course Mao wanted to harness a measure of capitalism, and that's why he was lobbying to end the Western trade embargo for decades before it was finally lifted.
But China began to trade without having capitalism for over a decade. So the two do not link. The U.S. started trading with China, largely to triangulate against the USSR.
I was literally just going to say that. Like, didn't they get to that point because they used like central planning from the jump of that revolution?
So I mean, like, I don't know what socialist countries have really enriched themselves through trade with the capitalist world. I'm not sure. So I know. I mean, I don't think that's the explanation for why the sole reason why Mao wanted to. So again, Mao talked in 1945 about direct foreign investment. Okay, direct foreign investment is a large reason why China has been so prosperous. Since the end of since the economic reforms. And so again, you're not going to get anyone investing in your society if and people are going to be poor and the state's going to be weak. And you're not going to have the achievements that China has had, and you're not going to have the success that China has had. And of course, Mao knew that, and he knew that in 1945 because he stated it explicitly. And just because they went through, the rhetoric might have shifted, and they might have been enduring a forced approach of self-sufficiency for a period. Once that period ended, they take advantage of the new opportunities. And so this, I mean, I don't know. I think certain people are beholden to an ideological, I don't know what the term is, pure, an ideological purity, right? And that they're not able to really let
Greg
go.
Literally are two different ideologies, and we're agreeing.
No, I know. I'm speaking to Greg mostly with his ideological purity. And I think I think it's keeping him from agreeing with me. But
I don't have a disagreement with you that China is on a socialist path, but I think we disagree about how to describe some of what's happening.
No, that may be fair. I mean, again, direct foreign investment, trillions into China has helped them to be as successful and achieve the things that they have. And that would have never happened. And I think Mao understood that, right? So Mao knew that direct foreign investment was going, and that's why, he was a proponent of capitalism. And that's why he lobbied.
Remember, his first source of foreign investment was the Soviet Union. So it wasn't about capitalism. They needed infusion of technology and capital for sure.
Well, I mean, he said that in 1945, and what did he say? Like he wanted China to, engage with the world, and he had no problem with harnessing a measure of capitalism as long as it was advantageous to the Chinese economy, and as long as the
Right.
capitalists followed the law. And so again, given where we are, on a evolutionary basis, that's totally understandable and Marxist to do. This idea that it's un-Marxist to harness capitalism, that's kind of what I reject, because I think that again, what is Marxism really about? It's really about identifying and pursuing and furthering the interests of the working class majority. And so
Well, the way I like to try to sort this out is Marx's theory was mostly about advanced capitalist countries. So they already had a development of industry and a
yeah,
lot of wealth,
a lot
right?
of
So
what Marx
Russia and what?
No,
What,
I was
bud?
agreeing. I'm agreeing with you. So yeah, I mean, when Marx's theory was developed, and he thought, at first, he thought the most advanced countries were the ones near closest to revolution.
Right. I mean, that's most of the work is about, advanced capitalist countries. So this
And so when
wasn't
it's
fleshed out what you
Yeah,
do
and when
in
it's the
China
most
and
backwards
Russia.
countries, that succeeds in revolutions, that it kind of doesn't mesh perfectly with Marx's words that were took place nearly 100 years prior to that,
So in
or 70 years.
1928, as after the NEP was wrapping up, when Stalin was putting together the Comintern's recommendation, they were saying NEP in some form was going to be universally necessary. That in advanced capitalist countries, there would have to be some period, they didn't want to unemploy everybody immediately. So there'd be some period of transition with private businesses. And then for underdeveloped countries, there would need to be a prolonged period of mixed economy to develop. So, I mean, I think, the controversial thing about China for Marxists is they had socialized the economy and then unsocialized it. So, I mean, that's why I think, if they had had a prolonged mixed economy or NEP and then socialized, there wouldn't be so much controversy among Marxists. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, and there definitely is controversy. I mean, a lot of self-identified Marxists refuse to even acknowledge that China is following a socialist path, right? A lot of self-identified left Western Marxists say China is state capital, and we reject them, and they're an empire just like the United States, and they're
You
both
you
sides are
just said
equally.
we know you said earlier that you agree China is state capitalism.
Right, and that's where I
Yeah,
would
the
differ
question
from.
is, does state capitalism mean
Yeah,
you're off the socialist path or
Oh,
not?
yeah,
oh, I mean,
That's the
well, I mean, I guess
question.
I mean, if you're a Leninist, but Marx is the guy, right? Like he's the Adam Smith to our to socialism or whatever, or what Adam Smith is to capitalism. Even though right wingers get Adam Smith wrong, but you know what I mean. Like this is the guy, right? He's the one who made communism a popular idea. You know, um, yeah, no, Lenin was 100% wrong. Obviously, so was Mao. But I'm not a Marxist. What is with these what is with these right wingers? Like anybody who disagrees with capitalism is a Marxist. Well, why do you think they say that?
Designated well-established enemy, right?
Oh yeah, you see, no, that's some that's some Marxist theory right there. Yeah, no, like and what me and him was talking about earlier with the Charlie Kirk thing, like they're trying to blame it on the left, but what does the left even mean? I mean, according like I mean again, we're having this conversation right now, like, so what does the left even mean for them? But like you said, it's a designated
All of
enemy.
us.
Yeah, all of us. Hey, Greg, are you pro trans by the way?
Pro-trans, as in
Yeah,
rights? Yeah.
you are. Oh, well, I guess
Yeah,
you
why
were
not?
right, BB. I guess you were right. for once.
Well, yeah, I mean, I found it an interesting question. So he asked me that in the before we went live, and I was just explaining. He's like, "You're the only one that has been pro-trans who's an ML," and I'm like, "That's weird. Like, we're all pro-trans. Like, I mean, none of us want to harm people because they're struggling with this issue where they believe that their gender doesn't match their physical body. I mean, that's just a tough place to be. We have compassion, we have empathy." But that's different than saying that they are actually, women or men, and they ought to be able to compete in men's sports. Like there's so it's a broad topic, and there's a lot of nuance. But definitely, I don't think any Marxist Leninists, want to, harm or disparage or, like condemn people because they're struggling with this issue. Like we just have compassion for them. And that's the only Marxist Leninist that I've ever come across. And Ali says that he's never come across a Marxist Leninist that has that perspective. So that's why he's saying I was right, Greg.
Yeah, but we all agree on guns too, right? Like, under no pretext, right?
Under no pretext, what?
Under no pretext, we all agree with gun rights, right?
Well, okay. So I think it's like to universalize anything, I think is liberal and bourgeoisie. And I think everything needs to be contextualized. I don't think there's any such thing as a universal answer. So I think
gun control is liberalism.
Okay. So I'm making a point, and I want you to grasp what I'm saying. So I'm talking about these liberalism kind of engages in these universal declarations of this ought to be and it always ought to be. So, for instance, freedom of speech, what other kinds of things? I mean, certain rights, right? And so they pretend to champion certain universal rights, and then in reality, they're hypocrites, and they don't really do it. And my point is, I always see liberalism condemning, societies that I support, like China, for their lack of, freedom of speech rights, or their lack of democratic rights, because they're not allowed to vote for billionaires into office. And my point is,
that's not why. Come on, let's have a reasonable discussion, man. Like, you see what I'm working with, Greg?
What do you
like,
disagree?
you're being bad faith right now.
Let me make my point. So my point is that it's always within the relative context. So, for instance, the libertarians want to say that it is always wrong to aggress against someone's person or property, right? This is the non-aggression principle, and they elevate this principle of non-aggression before every other consideration of morality or justice. This is what libertarians do, and I've had a long debates with libertarians on this point. So they take the non-aggression principle. They take the non-aggression principle and they elevate it above any other possible consideration. They say this is always universally wrong. And so I can quickly dispense with that nonsense by offering a situation where it's the appropriate thing to aggress against someone's property. And if you refuse to aggress against someone's property, guess what? You're a moral monster for not doing that. And so it's easy to come up with examples where this is true. And so the whole thing is these universal declarations I just reject out of hand, because everything is context dependent. And you have to understand the situation, the totality of the situation, in order to come up with the correct moral or just, action. And so, for instance, like, if you're there at a reservoir and there's this kid drowning, the only way to save him is to steal someone else's life jacket and throw that life jacket to them. If you don't do that, you're a moral monster, because you're letting somebody die because you want to respect somebody else's private property rights. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. But what was the universal? Okay, gun rights. Gun rights was what triggered me, right? So we're talking about gun rights, and I'm like, I'm totally fine with gun rights. I would also be fine with abolishing gun rights. And so, for instance, I don't think China has gun rights, and I respect China's decision. I don't condemn them for not allowing their citizens to have unfettered gun rights. Like, I don't condemn it. I support them in that. And so again, it's context dependent.
So
Is
you're
that really
for gun
nonsense?
rights.
Good.
So you're for gun rights, but you're pro China banning guns from people. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, I support the
He
Chinese people.
supports China stopping counter-revolution, I think is what Billy means to say, right?
Well, I support the Chinese people and their government in deciding what is best for China. And if they're deciding that, the people are deciding that, the lack of gun rights is best, and it's that law, including all the other laws, have resulted in this society that has very low crime, very high prosperity, and is skyrocketing in all these metrics, more than any other society in the history of the known universe. Like, who am I to condemn them for their lack of gun rights? Like, that would be ignorant of me. And so I don't know. I like to think I'm not an ignorant
But it's
person.
not neutral. You're willing to
I bet you
say
do.
support the government of China securing itself against armed rebellion, right?
Yeah. Right. And I wouldn't support that. I don't support a capitalist government doing that, right? Because I think a
Right.
capitalist government lacks legitimacy. A government of the capitalists deserves to be overthrown. And so I would fight against their efforts to restrict gun rights, because I just don't see them as fundamentally legitimate. But again, everything is context dependent. And you can't just ignore the reality of class or oppositional class interests when you're, trying to grapple with these things.
And
You
like we
don't
said,
really.
the context of China is with capitalists loose in society. So, sorry, go.
No,
Ollie.
you're fine. And just you don't see a contradiction in what Mark said about guns. And I mean, and first and foremost, like China, like the CCP is an oligarchy. I think we can all agree on that. But you
Mm-mm.
can't say that you're for gun rights in Marxist theory and then turn around and say you're fine with the ruling class or a bureaucratic elite taking guns away from people. You do understand why that's and to
Well,
justify it,
if
like
we agree PC was an oligarchy, yeah. I don't think that's
see, okay,
a common
well,
point. Yeah.
No, well, we
yeah, no,
don't agree
well, I
on that.
mean, yeah, no, okay, good. So I mean, like, and I guess this is what I don't get it. Like, it's not okay for uh it's not okay for a millionaire to hoard a resource that other people need, or make private rules for their capital or their means of production, but somehow it's okay for an oligarchy of politicians to do that if they call it publicly owned. Can you like explain that to me?
You want to, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I would agree with Joe. I mean, so it's an interesting approach to understanding reality, right? So I don't subscribe to this approach where there's a gospel of an inerrant gospel of Marx that can only be interpreted in a certain way. So I know Marx has a quote about, never let them take your guns, but that's in the context of a capitalist oligarchy. That's in the context of the bourgeoisie dominated political government, and he's not talking about a proletarian dictatorship. I mean, as far as my understanding is,
Yeah,
and
so
so
you just so again that's a contradictory. It's okay
Well,
for
Marx
one
doesn't
type of,
pretend to be fair or neutral. He's working for workers' power. So,
but you don't see why that's contradictory. How it's not okay for a billionaire to do it, but if you call yourself a politician who's for the working class, that magically makes it okay.
well, if you are, if you're just calling yourself that, it's different than if you are.
Right, in China
I mean, I
isn't.
don't see the CPC as equivalent to a billionaire.
Okay, but I'm talking about the
Seems to
same
be
power
what you are.
dynamics here. They in this context, in this scenario, these are basically two entities with with measurable power over other people, and they just get to decide it because they have the privilege and the authority to do so.
Well, it's different power, right?
I mean, power. I get no. I guess. I mean, power is power. I guess it depends on the group and the narrative. That is what you're
Well, I
kind
mean,
of
if
saying.
you're a capitalist, you have power to do a lot of things by your capital, but if you don't have the power of, life and death like the state does.
I
So
mean,
it's
you do.
different power.
I mean, you do. I mean, if you decide you don't want to pay out your an insurance claim, you can deny people access and get them killed that way. You decide the price tags of food and other necessities people need. I mean, see,
Sure.
so like
Not
within our,
direct power though. You're
huh?
not licensed to kill by the state
I mean,
as a
well, I mean,
capitalist.
it's
Yeah,
legal murder,
indirectly,
so
sure.
yeah, it's legal murder. Like, I mean, so like my whole thing is just like these are the same power dynamics we're talking about. We're talking about uh, a class of people, a minority class who gets to determine all these things for the rest of us. So why would we think that these people are going to just one day magically decide they don't want the power anymore when they benefit from the power so much? Why would they decentralize themselves or give more power to the people?
Well, I mean,
Well, I
I
mean,
think.
you're not
Go ahead.
believing in class rule then. I mean, yet there's a represented class. You're saying that the government becomes a class unto themselves. It sounds like.
It's, yeah, I mean, well, that's state capitalism. That's just the state being the central capitalist instead of a guy with a top hat and a monocle. It's a guy with a military uniform or a suit and tie. All you're doing is just transferring power to a different kind of class, but there is always going to be a ruling class because that's what class systems are.
Well,
I
this
just want
class.
to. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys for engaging with this. I'm having a good time, and then I want to invite anybody that's listening. I will give you a link if you want. If you're really motivated to jump on, this is again kind of a social media experiment, but I'd be happy to let anybody. There's the comments are going pretty good. If you click on the comments over on the right, you can see people's comments and stuff. So if anybody really wants to jump in, let me know, and I can send you a link to the studio. But this is a good discussion. I mean, these are the kinds of talks that we have on text, and it's so laborious to text these things out. And then it's much easier, face to face. We explain with honesty, how we answer these questions. So right now we're kind of stuck on the idea that hierarchy is hierarchy, a state is a state, and once these people have power, they're not going to relinquish it. And so it's the allegation is that it's disingenuous of the Communist Party of China, for instance, to say that in the future we're trying to attain this end stage communism where the state ends up being abolished and we no longer have borders, we're not using money, and we can let worker owner give state ownership give way to worker ownership. And so the Ollie, you're just kind of expressing your disingenuous, your disbelief in this narrative.
Nope, you already said it. It's the Elementalist.
I'm sorry, I
No, you're fine.
apologize. I
You're
probably
fine.
am going to continue to butcher it. My brain works doesn't
You've
work
never
always great.
you've never asked me what that means, by the way.
That's true. You want to tell us?
Um, it means a nourishing society.
Cool.
Um, yeah. So, you guys understand why no Marxist-Leninist system has nor ever will achieve communism, right? That was the whole thing I was trying to get to, like the reason why there's so much
Yeah, you're
violence
trying to
and
say any ruling party will become a ruling class.
bingo,
That's-
exactly. And we've seen this with every Marxist-Leninist society. Um, we've at the end of the day, you have to abolish the class system, because if you don't, there's going to be a power vacuum. You're just going to replace, the billionaire or the boss or the landlord with a politician or a bureaucrat. And if the same power involves harming innocent people, you know, it's hard to believe that, because again, when you look at anarchist systems that have abolished it within months, and you got China, it's about to go on its 90th year, and it still hasn't even decentralized once. Like, the theory eventually becomes practice proven, right?
Well, the
Ollie,
anarchist. Go
it's
ahead.
not 2 against 1 isn't fair. We need 3 against 1.
The
So,
elementalist.
sorry, the alimentalist. I am going to no. So Dust wanted to come and join us, so I sent him a link, and he was going to jump on. And so I
Oh my
feel
God.
bad. I'm kind of making a joke that it's 2 against 1. We can't take you, but we need 3 against 1. It's
Come on, I can fit more of you.
it's a testament to
You're
your
just getting warmed up here, huh?
I'm just getting warmed up.
So yeah, Dust asked for a link, and so I sent it to him. So hopefully he'll pop in a second. But no, I mean, I get your argument, and I think, I mean, you understand the counter argument is that there's no time in history so far that any of these societies could have abolished the state or decentralized, because the state was necessary to protect themselves from Western imperialism. I mean, that's
Right.
that's the response. I mean, if China would have tried to abolish their state at any time, they would have been, just destroyed, and the people wouldn't be nearly as well off. And so it's choices made to benefit the people, and that's why they haven't decentralized. But hey, Dust.
Hey, I'm surprised you put me in
Hey,
so
Dust.
soon. I was
Dust,
listening, and
how are
this is
you?
actually easier connection than trying to listen to it through Facebook. And I'm glad to hop on here. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a while since we talked, so I'm glad you're doing good. I saw you had a great holiday not too long ago at the fair. I saw your Facebook stuff. Sounds like you're on the road driving your truck.
Yeah, let me mute some stuff. And if the noise gets too much, go ahead and mute me, because I'm driving. I don't want my video on in case my boss tries to incriminate me and all that stuff.
But do you have an idea about how to
Capitalist.
guide our discussion in a productive?
Yeah, I mean, usually the guests that you have on are to the right on social issues to a point that I find abhorrent, that I don't even see the need to have a conversation with. And now you have someone on whose views of Marxism seem, I don't know, uninformed, to the point where I would also not want to have a conversation with. To the point I wouldn't even think it was.
So you just came on here to let us know that you're mad at facts you can't refute, basically?
No, I mean, I can refute those facts rather easily. I mean, China has developed a more advanced political economic system than capitalism and imperialism. They have lifted.
That's not an argument I made.
I mean, but you're saying you're against it, and the only thing you can support is these small, isolated, temporary examples of things that you deem okay as anarchism. The only things we should ever support.
Yeah, but
like,
you're saying,
I don't think you're going to convince anybody with that.
I mean, not you, because you're you, but empirically and historically, anarchism has been achieved, and it's achieved.
Has it lifted 90 billion people out of poverty? And doing that all without genocide, slavery, or direct colonialism? Has it done any of that? No, it hasn't done any of that. China has. The Soviet Union has.
Can you name how was
yes, the Soviet Union, China, the Soviet Union took the most backwards semi-feudal society in Europe and turned it into a modern industrialized space age power within decades. And they used socialist planning to do it. And it was a beautiful thing. And the majority of the world's people were all inspired, and also inspired oppressed, colonialized people to rise up and have nationalist revolutions, and gave material support to them. The achievements of the Soviet Union are unmeasurable, and what they have given to humanity is something that we can barely recognize. That were almost impossible for us to recognize the complete of their contributions to the improvement of the conditions of humans as they exist in the modern era. Like,
Okay, well, one, you can tap dance around it all you want, but anarchism has achieved moneyless, classless, and stateless societies. You're trying to
for
tap
how
dance
long?
around it,
For how
and
long? And
they've
in what conditions?
And on what scale?
and they've
Where?
done it, and we'll get to that. We'll answer all of that, and
You'll answer all of
they've
that. I
done
gave
it.
you a specific example just now of what the Soviet
Okay, but
Union did.
yeah, but Dust, here's the thing,
And
man. Like,
I guarantee you
stop
will not
interrupting
be
me.
able to name
Listen, you
a
can't
single
listen.
anarchist experiment that did 1/1000th or even 1/1,000,000th of what the Soviet Union has done for the progression of humanity.
It
You
doesn't
cannot
matter.
do it. It does
Okay,
not
but
exist.
how was the Haudenosaunee not moneyless, classless, or stateless? Can you explain that?
I'm not saying maybe it fit all your boxes. Did it improve the lives of vast numbers of people the way the Soviet Union did, which
Yeah,
is
but the
what
so
Marx's goal was? No,
all those
it didn't.
successes come at the expense of human rights violations,
Really?
genocide,
Really?
mass murder.
Okay.
Yes,
So if
real.
there's only two systems on a large scale today that have ever existed, capitalism and lower stage socialism, which one is superior? If
What's
you
lower stage
compare
socialism?
if you compare what was
Soviet Union.
done and compare the deaths and compare repression, what the Soviet Union done
Are you really
and what
doing
China has
whataboutism?
done. No, it's
Are
not
you really doing
whataboutism. It's
whataboutism?
what has
And you know what?
actually existed. It's not
Right.
Okay, but
whataboutism. It's
whataboutism isn't
not
an argument.
whataboutism to compare what has existed and which one is better. You're
You
trying to
just
get
said
me to
that
compare
compared.
the Soviet Union and China against things that have barely been in existence.
I
That's
mean,
not
to be honest,
whataboutism.
it is whataboutism. The U.S. and the USSR, they were. I mean, the U.S. is more socialist than the USSR because they're more democratic.
Really?
So already you
No.
fail there. Number two is if the same
No,
result
I disagree. I think the
is
Soviet Union was more democratic. In many ways, the Soviet Union was more democratic. In many ways, China is more democratic because they have
no,
large
not by a
democratic
long shot.
processes that involve millions of people in decision making.
Not
There's
by a
more
long shot,
people
man. In order to be
who are active members in the Communist Chinese Party than there is with power than there is members within the Democratic and Republican Party with any bit of power. That is a fact. They are
no,
more
the fact that
democratic on many measurable, consistent ways in China than they are in the United States.
no, the fact is
Yes.
it no. And in fact, the fact is in the US, when I run as a politician or a statesman or whatever you want to call it, I don't have to pledge allegiance to the CCP, which is
But
exactly
what are
the
your
type.
chances of winning other than a local election without joining two imperialist parties controlled by the same billionaires
It's not
with near
democratic.
identical
Okay,
policies?
you're trying to pivot.
In China,
You're
the
trying to pivot. Let me
decisions
finish. No,
are
no, 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 no.
democratically
No, no,
made
no, 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 no.
by
I've
hundreds
let
of
you interrupt me
thousands of
like 10
people
times. No,
active
I'm not.
within the
I'm
Communist
going to
Party. That
refuse
level of
to keep
democracy is
going
not
because you've
anywhere
interrupted
close to
me
what is in the
10
United
times
States.
and it's starting to get annoying.
Okay.
So you're
I,
gonna let me finish, Dust.
okay.
Anyways, when I run in the US as a politician, I don't have to pledge allegiance to Donald fucking Trump in order to become a politician. Like the fact
Well,
that you
if you
have to
want to
do that
win within
in
the
the
Republican
CCP,
Party now,
I'm
you
not. Let me
probably do.
finish.
And the
Let me
Republican Party
finish.
is the only
Let me
party that can
finish.
win in
Yeah.
certain
Okay.
regions, as it
I didn't
currently
hear anything.
stands.
I didn't hear anything you said. and
Okay.
and and so the fact that it's more democratic in the U.S., which I'm not
It's
defending the
not.
U.S. I don't
You
like
haven't
the
proven that
U.S.
point.
It's whataboutism, and the worst part is
You haven't proven that point
China
whatsoever.
is more authoritarian than the U.S. But I give
No.
them props because at least they have the balls to admit it.
Okay. So, Dust, you brought some energy, but the problem is we
He's not listening. I honestly don't think it's worth
No,
having a
because
conversation.
he keeps
So-
interrupting me, and
Because
every time I
you
make a
keep
point, he
saying
interrupts
stuff I
me,
already
and I've let
countered.
him do it like
You
10
keep saying
times.
inaccuracies
He's so
and
angry.
falsehoods.
You're so
I'm not
mad
angry.
over things you
You
can't
keep
refute.
saying complete lies, inaccuracies, and falsehoods,
You haven't
and
proven
then
it's a
making
lie.
points on those.
You haven't
Yes, I
proven
did.
it's a lie. How did you do that?
Okay, the U.S. You do have to give allegiance to Trump if you want to win office
No,
within
you
the
don't.
political conditions
No, you don't.
in the United States and many political realities
No,
within
you
this
do.
country.
No, you do
Only a
not.
Republican,
No, you do
only a
not.
Republican, like just statistically, only a Republican will win in certain districts and certain offices. And given Trump's popularity within that and ability within the party, only a Trump supporting Republican will be able to get those offices. And
Well,
that's a
you
political
still-
reality in the United States.
Man, I
That's a
can be
political
on
reality.
the Socialist Party ticket in Tennessee and would still be able to run. I wouldn't have to pledge allegiance
Sure,
to
you
Donald
could
Trump.
run, but would you win?
So
You wouldn't
you're
win.
not, huh? It doesn't matter. You still have that right to do it.
Is it a
So what
right?
did you
If it's a
prove?
right, if it's
You didn't prove me
inconsequential?
wrong.
Right.
If is it a right if it's inconsequential? What is democracy? Is democracy the ability to run an election and have no power, or is
China
democracy
and
the
the US are
ability
not a
for
democracy.
masses of people to actually have power
Right.
after what's done? And in China, masses of people, in the interest of what's in of masses of people, is making decisions in China.
No, the CCP is making decisions and they're an oligarchy.
And what are
If
their
you don't put-
goals? And what are their goals? Their goals are to eliminate poverty.
Their
And what have
goals
they
is
done?
whatever
And what have they done?
GDP
They've
wants.
actually
It's not-
achieved. They've achieved those goals. And
What
not only
goals?
that,
What goals?
just even if you say, oh, it's just a smoke screen, and the main Chinese party, they got all the say, and it's just even the smoke screen of democratic processes in China is more advanced. There is
No,
more ideas discussed. There is more classes represented, and there's more diversity represented in the discussions within the Chinese government in comparison to that of the United States.
Sure, as long as you pledge allegiance to the CCP, you don't got to do that under the U.S.
Okay, even call it a smokescreen. So your definition of a democracy is if you don't have to openly pledge allegiance to something to have a say, then it's a democracy. That seems like
of course not. I don't think China or the U.S. is democratic at all. But the
I think
U.S.
the
is much
China
more democratic.
is fundamentally more democratic than the United States in many ways, and especially in the ways that actually matter, and especially in the ways where people have legitimate say, control, and direction of the government. China is far more democratic.
And can you give me a specific? Because all the things you named were everything that happens in the U.S. So can you give me a specific on how they're
regions.
supposedly more democratic?
They have complete autonomous regions and healthcare systems, semi-socialist and socialist healthcare systems dependent on the needs of the various regions.
So does the U.S.
No,
So
it's all state.
About?
It's from a state-run basis. It's not, and those states go back to colonial processes with a mix of different people all on top of each other in ways that benefit the oppression of the majority of those people.
You have not named a single thing.
Let's look at the South. Okay, let's look at the South. I can say there is no group in China that has as little political power as black people in the South of the United States. If you look at systematic gerrymandering and the ability of the United States to remove the political power of black people in the South, there is no instance of that in China whatsoever. And if you look at the Republican rule in the South, Republican ruled states have less education, less health care, less democratic rights. Near every indicator of economic and political power,
so
we have less in the South.
Yeah, so we can agree both systems suck and they're not democratic.
I would say
but at
that
the end
there
of the day,
is no example. There is no example of any group facing such political repression in China. There is no example
What does that have?
comparative,
You
and there
keep
is no
pivoting a
example
lot.
comparative to the Chicano people.
Yeah, listen. At
And
the end
there
of
is
the
no
day,
and there is no there is not all there is also not masses of undocumented immigrants in China that are treated as second or third class citizens. That is not a reality in China either.
Are you against the immigration?
No, I'm against the exploitation of immigrants. I want immigrants to have full rights, and I want people of indigenous ancestry to reclaim their land.
So what
And
does China?
the majority of people, like the people in Aslan, should have Chicano rule.
So what does China stopping? Because I don't know too much on that, but even if that was the case, what is China
I'm saying there's
stopping illegal immigration?
instances. If you want to say which one's worse, which system is worse, okay, let's go into wars. How long has the United States been at war? How many military bases the United States have all over the world?
I
How many
listen. Listen,
coups?
you're
How
asking
many
me to
coups
defend
has
the
the United
U.S.
States? We're talking about
Listen,
being undemocratic,
I'm not
being
really.
authoritarian, being repressive.
They're both
You
authoritarian.
cannot compare China with the United States.
Of
The United
course, I
States,
can. Of course, I
no, you
can.
can't.
They both have a central government, and they both have billionaires controlling the rest of the population. So yes, they're both authoritarian. Of course, I can.
Okay, if you're
Except
going to go
China's
with
more
blank
honest about
statements,
their
but if we're
authoritarianism.
going to go into the minute details and compare if those are the only two major systems that exist, and we're going to go into the details of object being democratic, being repressive, China is far more democratic and far less repressive than the United
Well,
States
that's
on
100%
almost
not
every
true.
single
But even
indicator.
if it was, who cares? Both systems need to be demolished.
So you demolish everything and have nothing left but chaos,
No,
and
you
then
have
it's just
you have
rule of the
socialism.
fittest. You have
No,
socialism.
you actually have
So
socialism and
so
communism.
no,
That's
I
what you
think
have.
you'll get chaos. I
No,
think you'll
because
get chaos
anarchism.
and
No, because
murder.
again, you weren't here, Dust. But we have dozens of examples of anarchist systems actually achieving socialist and communist systems. So it's not leaving it up to chaos. It's structuring society from the bottom up through free association of workers, like Marx
That's
wanted.
what socialism is able to do, and the only way they're able to do that is to
I
have
literally just said
a
that.
strong enough central force to be able to repress the bourgeoisie. If you eliminate the state overnight, the
Wrong.
bourgeoisie will be in power. If you eliminate the state
That's
overnight,
funny
Rockefeller
because
is still gonna hire his goons to
that's
murder all
funny
the union
because
organizers.
yeah, it's funny you say that because I remember a decentralized militia taking on the greatest fighting force in the world. They were called the Viet Cong. They weren't centralized, were they? And they took on the greatest fighting military force in the world. Of course, they were wrong in ideology, but the fact remains: you try and pretend that you need a ruling class to defend itself. No, the Zapatistas defended themselves against the Mexican government in 1993. The Viet Cong used decentralized militias and guerrilla warfare to take on the U.S. So we know for a fact
The Vietnamese
anarchism
were
can.
Marxist Leninist communists who
What?
established their version of a
Okay, and
Dictatorship.
I just said they were wrong in
the
ideology.
proletariat.
Yeah,
The
no, and I said they were
Zapatistas
wrong in ideology,
movement,
but
the
they used
Zapatistas movement
They
has
used
been isolated to only a small section of Mexico in semi-autonomous regions. And in their original statement, they wanted national Mexican revolution. They wanted a national proletarian revolution, but because they were unable to achieve it, they changed their
not a state
goals and
revolution.
then pushed and basically became a small isolated autonomous zone. But even by their goals, they wanted a proletarian revolution in Mexico and still do.
They
Like
did,
all
and they
these,
got it in 1990. They did and got it in
they didn't.
1993.
They have a
They
small autonomous region that's
you
still
keep saying
impoverished because it's
you keep saying small.
isolated.
It's not impoverished. No, that's a huge lie. They're not impoverished.
Yes,
In fact, they've successfully have given all their people a livable standard of living. They're not impoverished. That's not true at all. and they decentralized in 20.
Poverty metrics,
they-
they're the most impoverished state in Mexico.
Oh my God, you're telling me there's
There's
no
not-
poverty in the autonomous zone in Chiapas? They
Chiapas
still
and the
live in
Zapatistas are.
poverty.
Chiapas is the town and the city that the Zapatistas are in. So you're just proving you don't even know anything about the Zapatistas.
Chiapas is an entire region south of Oaxaca, where my wife is from. It's an entire state.
But
It's an entire state, not a town.
You're talking
It's an
about
entire
Chiapas.
state.
4 states in Mexico.
You're talking about Chiapas, not the Zapatistas. The Zapatistas.
Yes, I'm talking about Chiapas, and I'm talking
Okay,
about
so then
the
that has
small,
nothing to do with the Zapatistas then.
No, but they're small autonomous.
Okay, so
it
what's
is
your
a
point?
small. They're still impoverished.
No, that you
Having
just
equality in
agreed
poverty is not
Zapatistas and Chiapas is
socialism.
not the same. So
Okay,
what are you talking
The
about? Chiapas
Zapatistas
might be.
control. Okay, the Zapatistas control a small portion of Chiapas.
You keep
And
we've heard
in
you
that
the first time.
autonomous region, poverty still exists, and they will tell you they are still poor. And they
In
still
Chiapas-
want
in
a
Chiapas,
national
yes.
revolution.
In Chiapas, yes.
In the
The Zap-
autonomous region that the Zapatistas control, they're still in poverty.
No,
They
they're
still
not.
need
You
to
made that
improve their
completely up.
conditions. They don't have any means of production other than subsistence agriculture.
No,
We
they
don't
have
need to
clinics.
collectively-
They have hospitals. They have schools. Well, you've never even studied the Zapatistas because they have all these things and they provide a livable standard of living.
Okay.
Poverty is not a problem for them. So you're just making stuff up.
Poverty
Try
is still
again.
a problem in the autonomous zone.
You're
They don't-
you just and I love how you accidentally admitted it was Chiapas you're talking about. Maybe you're probably lying about that as well.
What are
But
you
the Zapatistas,
talking
no.
about?
You
I said
but
the
the Zapatistas,
autonomous,
no.
the
You
small
won't
autonomous
be able to
region
provide.
in Chiapas. They're still impoverished. They still need to improve their conditions.
Chiapas, Mexico, maybe.
These small
Chiapas,
collectives.
Mexico, maybe. Zapatistas, they are. I mean, they're
You know
getting
who else
there.
agrees
but
with
they
me
have-
about poverty in Mexico? Maoists in Mexico, Marxist-Leninists in Mexico, which I also have been in contact with. Like what they
What does that
did
have to do with
in
anything?
what they were able to accomplish there is not an end goal. We want modern, socialized, prosperous societies.
Yeah, without the expense of human rights violations and genocide. Yeah.
Okay, and what are the two models that are available on mass scale?
Mass scale is why do you think mass scale is relevant? Why not?
Because that's what's
improved
actually existed on a mass scale. If not, it's small and insignificant.
The Zapatistas have hundreds of thousands of people in their society.
Are the Zapatistas such a political economic force that they're raising the rest of the people of Mexico out of poverty? Are they inviting all
I just told you they
inviting all of the immigrants that are coming through to stay with them and build up their socialist project?
I don't know about that, but I mean,
They're
at
not.
the end of the day,
They don't have the ability to because they're
keep
isolated. They're isolated from the larger global economy. They're isolated from necessary resources, and they're allowed to exist on the periphery as long as they don't hurt the overall profits of the Mexican state.
You keep tap dancing around the fact that the Zapatistas beat the Mexican government and won. What do you think any of this has to do with the fact that anarchism is the only system to achieve socialist and communist systems?
I don't want a socialist and communist system. I want to improve the conditions of the people.
So you just self-owned yourself because you came on here to tell us how angry you are
based
about
on your
and
rigid,
now you're admitting
based
that
on
you don't
your
want a socialist
rigid
system.
definition.
Is there
based
really
on your
anything else we need to discuss?
Based on your rigid. Based on your rigid, idealistic definition of what socialism and communism is, the majority of the world's people
no, you don't get the backtrack.
have no interest.
No, you don't get the backtrack. You
interest.
accidentally told us all what you said.
I
So
said
no,
it using your
just
terminology, and then
Why don't you just leave the
went on that
conversation?
terminology.
Just leave the conversation, man. We get it. You're angry. You came on here because you were angry, and now you just got owned by an actual communist. You can leave now.
Really?
Okay.
I mean, how long have you been studying Marxism or Leninism? You don't even have the basic points of Leninism down, and you wipe it off with basic right-wing cliches. Like
Oh
I've
my
studied
God. The
Marxism and Leninism over 50
anarcho-communist is a right
years.
winger. Oh my God. What a
No, but
fucking
the
cope, man.
majority
That is such cope.
of the things that you used,
Oh my God.
the majority of your talking points that you used to dismiss Leninism are the exact same ones that right wingers use.
But let me interject. So, Dust, you brought some energy. This is an experiment. I think I shut up and Greg shut up because we didn't want to like all triple team our interlocutor, and I appreciate him for coming on. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the past 2 hours. Obviously we
This
have
was nice.
disagreements. We have disagreements. We're not going to agree, and so I'm not persuaded by the arguments of anarchism, and and that's why I'm a Marxist-Leninist. But he is not persuaded by our arguments, and that's why he's an anarchist. And so again, I think it's important to model substantive and rational discussions that really are thoughtful and trying to get at the heart of disagreements. And so it's not about being louder, even though I can't help but be loud when I talk. I understand Dust, and I understand Dust has passion, but the object here is really to respect differences and discuss them without getting upset, without getting loud. And it's not easy. It's not easy because we are all passionate and we all have our strongly held opinions and beliefs. And so, but it's good practice for me. And I, again, just this experience has been great. I've had a lot of people commenting, people wanting to get in, and so I'm happy with that. Where do we want to go from here? Like I can continue this. I don't, I'm a little upset that, Ollie is not happy with Dust wanting to leave. And so, I don't want people to feel oppressed or, attacked. That's not,
I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't literally mean I want him to leave. I just
okay.
it was just he was being ridiculous, and
Okay.
I apologize, BB, but I think we can get back on track with the Rainbow Coalition I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, you brought up Fred Hampton, and so
they were all Marxist-Lenin. Fred Hampton was a Marxist-Leninist as well.
But didn't
really?
Yes.
No way.
He had the idea, though, of
and he supported China and he supported North Korea.
So
you're lying.
So I think why he brought that up, Fred Hampton, earlier was because he had an idea of a broad ideological coalition against racism and against fascism, and so I think that was the context within which he was brought up earlier. So I was going to ask Dust, as far as we're seeing a perhaps at the beginning of a kind of a shift to a more fascisty society. And in that context, are we open to a coalition with other people of other ideologies, well-meaning liberals, even well-meaning conservatives, and perhaps, well-meaning anarchists? Can we embrace the idea of a common front against a rising tide of fascism? Was I think where the Ollie Mentalist was going with this.
So with the and yeah, like the I like what the Black Panthers did because they weren't all centralized, at least not 100%. Like they were more like democratic socialists, but
they practiced democratic centralism like openly. Had chairmen. They had very similar. They had very similar processes as the Soviet Union, as Korea, and even the original Point program was a direct inspiration from the North Koreans.
Yeah, they had all their state parties, and I think they had a national committee as well. But as far as organizing, it was pretty localized and grassroots, which is pretty cool. Like they actually went into the Black communities and were asking people what they need, and they were giving out. And I really like
That's the
10-point
same thing they
program.
did in the Soviet Union and China and all these other places you call mass murderers
Um,
and evil.
yeah. Anyways, I think with the Rainbow Coalition, we can have like a unification of workers, at least on the things that we can agree on. Like one of the reasons why I believe they assassinated Charlie was because we were seeing both people from the left and the right say we're over these foreign wars, we're over these intelligence communities doing all these crazy ass things behind our back, like with the Epstein files and stuff like that. So, and I think that whole thing was just to really like divide divide the workers. So I think we need to get back to that. I think we need to start, fighting for free speech and gun rights and universal health care, any possible way we can. And I think now is the time to do it. Our best
So
bet.
what you had mentioned why you think Kirk was shot, and can you say that one more time? Can you explain that one more time? I didn't quite catch everything you said
Yeah, no. So
about like.
the official story isn't really adding up. I already knew something was fishy when I first heard about it, anyways. But I mean, like, the official story really isn't adding up. They're saying that the gun that they found in the forest, you have to assemble and reassemble that gun. So the idea that he assembled it, disassembled it, and then assembled it again in the forest, that doesn't add up. And now you got Tyler Robertson not even like saying he did anything. So I think this was definitely a conspiracy to divide the working class people. But I think as time goes on now, we're going to see more hostility towards the right, and maybe, just maybe, you know, MLs and anarchists and maybe even conservatives and liberals could find a way to unify the way Fred Hampton was able to do it with the Rainbow Coalition, which I'm pretty sure he got killed for.
I see why Greg invited you on now.
Greg?
Not Greg,
Well,
Billy. I see why Billy invited you on now.
why?
Because because he
Okay.
agrees with that, but I don't think that's how we unite. Like I don't think necessarily conservatives and liberals and anarchists are what does the uniting. The uniting happens of the working class and oppressed. And I don't think fascist propagandists like Kirk, Carlson, or any of the ilk had any, even if they personally were to can't come out less strong on Israel or this or that, because they're propped up by billionaires to begin with, I honestly don't think they had an ability to unite people or be an effective anti-war movement. I think in an effective anti-war movement and an effective rights movement has to come from the united working class and oppressed building power. So, and I'm not taking, and I also have like, I don't know who killed him. I don't know why. The only thing I know is that the fascist government is using this to their full ability to further repress speech and further attack our class, further attack unions, further attack everything we have. And I honestly don't think they were as worried about Kirk as a lot of the conspiracies would lead them to believe. I honestly don't think he had much ability to help. A fascist propagandist had little or no ability to help us whatsoever. And for whatever, either if it was a lone gunman or it was the Israeli state because they felt double crossed, I don't know. Like I don't see this as the way. I think the main issues are still national oppression expressed through racism and class exploitation. And I think organizing on those conditions from those vantage points, from the working class, from the oppressed communities, that's the way to go about it. And when I unite with people, I'm uniting with fellow workers, and I'm uniting with oppressed people facing the most intensified contradictions. I'm uniting with them to do actions that build power for us. I don't think there's a need to specifically reach out to conservative right-wingers, liberals, or regardless of their bourgeois political affiliation. I don't really think that's unique or necessary or effective.
I mean, I don't really think we disagree on that. I mean, do you know what the Rainbow Coalition is, though?
Yes, I talk with. I've spoken with the leader of the Young Patriots. I've read his book. I'm inspired by him. I really like the Rainbow Coalition. And the leader of it was really young, and he was shot down because he was building power in his community. He was openly a communist, and he supported the struggles liberation all over the world and socialist experiments like China and North Korea, all over the world, while organizing the working class and oppressed here. But it wasn't because it wasn't. They didn't kill Hampton because he reached out to somebody that had a Confederate flag. They killed Hampton because he reached out to somebody who was exploited, and he saw common cause in the exploitation, fighting against the exploitation. Like, I don't think we should just randomly go out and start talking to neo-Confederates who are more likely to kill us and destroy our unions than actually help us or support us in any way.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, like the Rainbow Coalition for me would be at least get on the issues that we can all agree on. Things like free speech and gun rights and stuff like that, pro-trans issues, and wherever we don't agree on, then we just don't work with each other.
Yeah, I think that's largely a liberal ideological approach instead of a Marxist class struggle approach. Like, we're not getting together on issues, we're getting together on changing and improving our conditions, and we're organizing oppressed people and the proletariat directly on that basis. And in that class struggle,
I don't see how Hampton was a liberal, but
no, I'm saying what you are purporting to do isn't what Hampton did.
I was talking about
it wasn't.
I don't think you understand what the Rainbow Coalition
you mentioned
is.
liberal issues, free speech, gun rights.
Yes, that's what you did. You said we should get together on issues that we agree on, but it's not issues we agree on. It's improving conditions for working class and oppressed people. And whether that's in those oppressed communities themselves or an international interracial coalition for the proletariat, it's still trying to face and address those conditions and improve those conditions. It's not specifically on any one issue. See, that's like saying, okay, we agree with the neo-Nazis.
You don't know what the Rainbow Coalition is.
What do you mean I don't know? I just told you I read the books of the founders and studied the history.
No,
I'm disagreeing with what you said and what you proposed.
You're disagreeing with the Rainbow Coalition because that's what Fred Hampton did.
No, that's not what he did. He didn't go to the Young Patriots and say, "Hey, we agree. We both like guns. Let's unite. We like guns." He said, "You live in abject poverty. We live in abject poverty. We are both brutally suppressed by the police. Let's fight against police brutality."
That was the Rainbow Coalition. Nobody ever said he went out and just randomly started talking to people.
What did you say earlier? We should get together on the issues we agree on.
Yes, exactly.
Those are issues and those are agreements. I'm saying we should get together and defend our class and improve conditions and have on the ground. So by the strategy of simply getting together on issues we agree on, we should get together with the neo-Nazis to oppose Israel, right?
But in reality,
the neo-Nazis, when it comes to the issues that we need to mobilize on, improving the conditions of immigrants, improving conditions within the Black community and within areas of the country where Blacks are a larger population, the neo-Nazis are dead set against doing those, and they're reinforcing the state violence. So neo-Nazis are not good people to work with on class struggle, regardless of what they say about Israel. So I'm just demonstrating it's class struggle and action towards improving our conditions in that struggle that unites us, and not claimed issues of agreement. That's
I don't
my
really
point.
see. Yeah, I think me and you agree then. I mean, I don't really see where our contention is on that then.
So,
And honestly, I've had disagreements with Billy Bob over this, the same issue. And you guys seem to be in agreement more with each other.
well, so Dust, the thing is, this isn't our normal blowback show. This is like a special. So I have the Alimentalist on because we're gonna have an ideological disagreement. We're gonna discuss our ideological disagreements. This is separate from our current events show that we do. And I really wanted to talk to him because I wanted to discuss our ideological disagreements, and I think I wanted to kind of do that in a way that is substantive and useful. And I think we've done that. But no, it's true that I know you've been on our current events show a lot, Dust, and yeah, we do occasionally disagree. And I think I don't know, those disagreements tend to be about our approach towards conservatives and people that would be considered racist. I think there can be an outreach to those people. I think those conservatives and people that have backwards views on a lot of issues can be educated and reformed. I think that's totally possible and necessary. But as a society, I don't have a lot of hope in the revolution, a proletarian revolution, taking political power from the oligarchs, at least in the short term. But I was thinking maybe I saw this really great attack on liberalism that it was like maybe 2 minutes long, and I was going to just play that and see if you guys wanted to respond to that. But I'm really open to whatever we want to do. I was about to mute. Okay, Dust muted himself because he's unloading his truck. But I've got nothing to do today. I know the Alimentalist might need to get a nap in, and Greg might have actual work to do. I don't know, but I'm good to hang around. I don't mind playing this clip. I thought might be interesting, or we could do something else. What do you guys want to do?
Well, I got 10 minutes. So, I mean, how long is the clip?
It's like 2 minutes. It's kind of an attack on liberalism. I like it. Let me see how I can. I don't know how to start. Okay, so let me try and present. Share screen. Okay. So what does that look like? Okay, so I'm going to try and play this. If you guys want to just listen to what he's saying, I mean, I find it, obvious, but also well-spoken.
Actually dead. What do you mean?
It's an interesting political ideology where basically it's got two major commitments. On the one hand, it has a commitment to things like human rights, the rule of law, individual freedoms, even things like a little bit of welfare and, let's say, ecological protection and things like that.
Sounds great.
Sounds great. At the same time, liberalism is committed to capitalism. And this is essential to liberal ideology, is that ultimately they are committed to the processes of ensuring that production is controlled by capital and maintaining the conditions for capital accumulation. The problem here is that when these things come into conflicts, then liberal leaders will resolve the contradictions in favor of capital accumulation. And this is what explains the fact that liberals have this reputation of being hypocrites. They're full of spectacular contradictions. You get people who are committed to things like liberal rights and etc., then openly backing a genocide. Like, what is anyone supposed to make of that? I mean, this is a very severe contradiction. And then what happens is that, crucially, liberals are anti-socialist. And so they'll do everything possible to crush actual progressive socialist movements.
Why is that? Why are liberals anti-socialist?
Because of their ultimate, most important commitment, which is to capital accumulation. They will never let that be threatened. And that's why we saw, like, when somebody as beloved as Bernie Sanders was a few years ago in the primaries, they had to band together and crush him. Now, this is interesting because when you're crushing socialist movements and you're ultimately also yourself crumbling and failing, then what does that do? It leaves the political vacuum open to who? The far right, right? And so liberalism gives way to fascism over and over and over. It's like clockwork. Fascists, their core principle also is capital accumulation, right? But they just dispense with the liberal values. And so liberals are actually more comfortable handing power over to the far right because they're confident that at least capital is going to be protected than they are handing power to socialists who will maintain their liberal values of rule of law and rights and things like that, but will not protect capital accumulation. And this is why we see this constant back and forth between the far right liberals, the far right liberals. The fascists take control, they create total social chaos. Everyone's like, this is far too extreme for us. Let's go for that safe center option again. They vote for the liberals. Liberals come back into power. Rinse and repeat over and over.
All right. I like that. What are you guys' thoughts?
I liked it except the last part. Do we have a track record of voting fascists out of power?
Who would have been a fascist in power? I don't know. Nixon? Did we vote Nixon out of power? I don't know.
I mean, maybe he was, but I don't know if we had a fascist transformation under him.
No, I see what you're saying. So you don't really see this rinse and repeat historical cycle go. So you kind of question that aspect of it. No, that's fair. I don't have any problem with you objecting to that. And especially in the United States, I mean, you could say that they've all been liberals, right? Maybe prior to World War I, you had fascists. I mean, maybe what was that guy? Andrew Jackson might have been a fascist Indian killer. Who knows? Did we lose Ollie? I think we might have lost Ollie. But yeah, and then he doesn't want me to call him Ollie. It's so hard to say elementalist for some reason for me.
It's a mouthful.
But
I'm getting the trash dropping hook. I was wondering if I need bills. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No worries. So, but yeah, no, I thought that was an interesting clip. I wanted to get some feedback just as a conversation starter and continuer thing. What did you think about his observations?
Yeah, reform is dead. You can't be center anymore. You have to be either left or right. And he was spot on. Like, he said a lot of the things I was saying earlier about capital accumulation. But if you really believe in the Democrats and the Republicans at this point, you're just not paying attention. They're both parties owned and controlled by the corporatocracy. And no matter how hard you vote, you're never going to get what you want, because that's never how ruling class works. So, we need to get out of the system. Again, talk about that Rainbow Coalition, maybe, and just, try and unite whatever working class solidarity we can, and use that collective power to get some of our labor back and some of our power back. We know eventually capitalism is going to self-destruct on itself, and the contradictions are going to be too big eventually, and it's going to dismantle itself. But, in the meantime, let's try and organize as much as possible so that, we don't get another fucking Mao, or a Pol Pot.
So Marxists.
Another Mao would be great. Another Mao would be great.
So Marxists see things through the lens of oppositional class interests and class struggle, and it's the struggle of the respective classes to really control the state. And so when I think of left and right, because you said left and right at the beginning, and when I think of left and right, I don't think left and right means anything other than the left is the working class and the right is the ownership class. And the right, wants to maintain the ownership class oligarchy and capitalist accumulation. And the left wants a government that is representative of the working class majority. I mean, that's, to me, that's what the class struggle is, and that's what left and right are about. Now, in the United States, in what is it? Normal discussions among I guess people that have been indoctrinated into liberalism. Left is different. Like somebody who's on the left is somebody with blue hair and drinks at Starbucks and votes Democrat, whereas somebody on the right is able to they have both their parents are still married and they go to church, and they have a good job. So it's like these ideas of left and right have become so useless and worthless. And I think it's important to concretize these terms and anchor them in actual reality, which I think is the reality of class, the reality of oppositional class interests. Because otherwise, I don't think these terms really mean anything. But as a anarchist, how do you anchor what is left and what is right? Like as a Marxist, it's easy. It's class struggle. But as an anarchist, how do you perceive and use these terms right and left?
I mean, I mostly agree with you on what they mean. Like it's just proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. Like as an anarchist, I say let's try and unify through grassroots local organization. Let's try and confederate rather than centralize or federate. Or just centralize. And I don't know. Like I said, the whole Charlie Kirk thing was crazy. Like I still can't believe he's dead. Not because I actually agree with him or anything, obviously, but it's just like, holy shit! If that can happen to him, it can happen to any of us.
Yeah, no, I think it serves the purposes of the ruling establishment because it gets, it ramps up the culture war and it gets the working class really divided along this cultural axis. And so that can only benefit their interests. They keep us fighting the culture war instead of fighting the class war. It's interesting. So, I mean, you want, the proletariat to, abolish the oligarchy, abolish the dictatorship of capital. But you just kind of oppose them, forming a party and then taking power and wielding power as a party because the party is always going to end up being just as bad as what it replaced, kind of thing.
The workers?
Yeah, like, I mean, the proletariat overcomes the bourgeoisie and we abolish their system of capitalist dictatorship. And so it's like, what comes after that? And for me, it's only sensible and logical that you would replace the government that represents the oligarchs with a government that represents the workers. And that just, is follows naturally from that. But as an anarchist, you kind of are in opposition to the idea of a proletarian government or a party that represents the people.
I see what you're saying now. Yeah, no. So what happens under anarchism, at least in my view, because I'm not the dictator of anarchism, but the way I see it, we confederate enough groups and organizations of working class people that share the same values and beliefs of, anarchism, or even just doesn't even have to, you don't necessarily have to be an anarchist, but the goal is to abolish the state through collective power. So as we use mutual aid and other left-wing policies to convince the average person that, maybe this thing can actually work, then we'll have enough power to create actual alternatives to the system that we have now. How long will it be before the government actually starts sending federal troops to us? I don't know, but I say we should be as nonviolent as we possibly can. Um, Good ideas don't require force unless that force is in self-defense. And I think, if everything does work out, if we do enough general strikes, if we accumulate enough capital of our own, we'll be able to essentially have an anarchist confederation of different groups and organizations that just align with socialism at the very most, and just want to just keep building and growing together, all and while also ensuring the autonomy of the individual and the groups themselves.
But I'm being sarcastic now and patronizing. But if the bourgeoisie develops a block of rights and tries to subvert us, we're going to surrender, right? Because we can't repress them.
No. We're gonna put some guerrilla action on them. Because every
that sounds
community.
very Stalin-esque. Very Stalin-esque. You're a brutal monster.
No, I mean, self-defense is actually anti-Stalin, but I see what you were trying to do with that. No, we're gonna put some guerrilla action on them, and we're gonna make sure each community is trained in self-defense and urban guerrilla warfare. And like I said, we want it to be nonviolent as much as humanly possible. We know they will come for us eventually, but no, the end goal is to preserve what we're trying to build, and protect ourselves, just the same way any individual would protect themselves if somebody tried to aggress on them. We're not going to provoke them. We're going to challenge them, but we're not going to unwarrantly or engage in violence unless the violence comes to us.
Okay. No, that was a good almost 3 hours. We need to do it again. I got a lot of positive feedback. It was an experiment. I think it was a successful one. I appreciate your time. I want to bump you out so we can talk shit about you when you're gone.
Hey, listen, no, this was a really good discussion. We definitely should do it again. I had a really good time. I really did. I know we're going to be fighting eventually in our group chat or our group page or whatever, but you are my favorite tanky, Billy Bob, for what that's worth.
Oh, well, Greg is also a tanky, and Greg,
Yes, Greg. It was really nice meeting you too, man. The most good faith tanky I've ever met. I got to give you props, man. Seriously, Dust, we need to do something.
It's nice to meet you, brother. I might come off with an affront because I disagree with what you're saying. I think it's mostly uninformed, but I wish the best for us. Hopefully, we come to agreement eventually.
Same to you, brother. Oh yeah, absolutely. We all had a good time, and we definitely got to do it again. With that, yeah. I must work for my Lord and put that money in. So, all right. I'll see you guys later.
Okay, see you later.
Okay.
See you soon. Okay, that was great. Like I said, this was an experiment. I feel it was a successful experiment. Greg, really, I appreciate you coming on. Dust got the energy, a little bit too much energy for a while, but it gave me a breather. But I think, if we had different ideologies represented, I wouldn't mind having a liberal on. He's an anarchist. I wouldn't mind dealing with a conservative. It's just it's stimulating, and I think I don't know, interesting is the best word that I come up with. I'm really interested in having these, comparing and contrasting people's ideologies, why they believe what they believe. Anarchism is a tough sell for me. Like, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't understand, how people can embrace.
The ideals are nice.
Yeah. But yeah, it's tough. But I think that's one place we can agree. Like, ideally, in generations, once capitalism has been defeated, we all could say that we embrace a a classless, stateless, borderless society where we don't have to be exploited and do wage labor for 40 hours a week just to survive. Like pursue other interests and have a more fulfilling life, for sure. But how do you get there is the question, and just it boggles my mind how people can not grapple with that. But people are different. So, but yeah, no, I would be really up to doing this again. The thing is, it is difficult to find people who I disagree with ideologically to come on and have a chat. And I've been on the lookout. I'm always asking around in different groups, hey, let's discuss this. And I want people to trust that I'm going to, allow them to talk and I'm not going to be a jerk. And so it's important for me to always be, nice, and let people speak and hear them out and engage with what they're saying. And so, and I think we just need more of that. And so that was the whole kind of purpose. What else can be said before we sign off? We're at 2 hours and 56 minutes. Very nice.
I think his main, I think he hasn't read Lenin. He doesn't have an understanding of Lenin. He hasn't read Imperialism, Highest Stage of Capitalism. He hasn't read State and Revolution. And some of it is just outright believing the lies and exaggerations of what communists have done. Yeah, those two things. And then what he is advocating is exactly what communists have done, only they've done what it takes to succeed.
Yeah, in
they
real
have
life.
repressed the bourgeoisie. Yeah, so it's hard. It's honestly, scale. I'm not sure. With my class struggle perspective in trying to unite with people who are willing to actually organize or connected to organizing, I don't see much in ideological argument for ideological argument's sake. I mean, I would hope that we could, if I was engaged with an anarchist in the struggle, and then we could have those conversations, or working together maybe, but seeking out anarchists online for them to not have read Lenin, claim my heroes are mass murderers.
Yeah. No, I mean, I knew entering into this discussion, there was going to be severe limitations. Like I was well aware of the limitations of a discussion, but I'm sure there's other anarchists that, maybe have less limitations, but, or anyway, I mean, not to say that, he's, he wasn't a good interlocutor again. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of limitations. There's ideological limitations, and there's the ability to communicate. There's personality limitations. So there's all kinds of limitations on discourse. And but I think there's use and value in comparing and contrasting ideologies and talking with others that see things differently. Like I don't think that's a useless effort, and even to the point that it's useless, at least it's entertaining for me, and so I'm entertained. And that might be the most we get out of it, is some entertainment. But I'm learning, and I learned a lot, and I shut up for a while. I let Greg talk with him, and I learned from that. I shut up and I let you talk with him. I learned from that. And so it's definitely a valuable experience for me to participate in this. So I would say Dust is wrong to say that there's no value in these things. But you know what? I might evolve to the point where I no longer see value. I could develop and learn and come to the exact place that Dust is now. Like, that's totally possible. And I'm like, why am I going to keep banging my head against these ideological walls? It's pointless. So anyway, what else, guys? Because we have been going for a while.
I'm gonna have to jump.
Okay.
So.
Billy. I regret not being able to discuss. It's nice seeing you, Greg. I wanted to discuss the Marxist view on gun control. with the guest. And I think a lot of people get it wrong. It's not proliferation or limitation that it's our position. It's disarm our enemies and arm the people that are going to bring about class struggle. So in the United States, they arm the petty bourgeois, the military and police, and the labor aristocracy the most.
Yeah.
The most
No, and
racist
when the
people
Panthers get
have the
guns, they
most
wanna-
guns. The most backwards reactionary people have the most guns, and the lower section of the proletariat, like the white section of the lower proletariat that's in contact with the oppressed, often ends up they can't afford guns, and oppressed people have active gun control put on them, like stop and frisk and the like. And I think if we wanted a gun policy, even within the capitalist framework, and we had the class ability to gain power and demonstrate it, we should push for the exact opposite. We should put gun regulation, which disarms the petty bourgeois and the labor aristocracy, and protect the basic gun rights of the proletariat and the oppressed. A lot of people don't get that. It's either all proliferation or all take away.
Yeah, no, I would agree with yours. And I mean, my point was that, it's the context, our gun laws ought to be dictated by the context and where what kind of a society is it? What's going on within that society? Do we need gun laws? Are gun laws going to be beneficial for the masses? Or are they not going to be beneficial? I mean, these are the things that need to dictate our policy, not a universalism, not anything like that. Because to me, liberals deal with this universalism, and then they're just big hypocrites. But Dustin, I'm glad to have you back on. It's been a while since we last
Yeah, it's been a
spoke.
while. There was a lot of people around you I just could not deal with. It was bad for my mental health. I had to back up for a second.
No,
but you're still at it. You're still at it. You're talking. You're still at it, brother. I respect you and the work you do.
I appreciate that. But yeah, let me just sign off. Man, 3 hours in, my blood sugar's low.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me hold you even longer.
More of these kind of debates and not focus on current events and more disagreeing. And so we'll have you back soon. I'm sure you'll see us when we're going live again. Okay.
All right, brother. I'll see you around.
Okay.
Later.